And we are live today. Welcome, everybody, to our Wednesday live conversation. You'll notice that we look kind of like the Brady Bunch. We're just one shy of the Brady Bunch right now. But we've got a lot of really cool people on here. And I'm just going to go around the horn, let everybody introduce themselves. Patrick, we're going to start with you.
Sure. I'm Patrick. I go by Data to my friends, part of the Midwest Preparedness Project, and wearing this really cool shirt I picked up from some friends of mine in Tennessee a month or so back. So just excited to be here. Glad to be here.
All right. Tag from the Life Done Free YouTube channel. Tell us who you are.
First, thanks for having me. I'm a long-time watcher. I've been on Billy's show amongst, a whole lot of the other ones. I'm an off-grid, 100% off-grid homesteader. I kind of started as a prepper, and I'm a newly, 4-year in homesteader. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Billy,
Permapastures Farm, and look, right out of the gates, I know this is like a Brady Bunch thing going on, but I want to point out that the only one not wearing an SOE shirt is Tag.
Oh, man. Right out of the gate, throw him under the bus.
Does that mean he doesn't get to be in the Brady Bunch till he wears an SOE shirt?
No, we got to look at. No, we're on Gilligan's Island. He gets to be Mary Ann.
Well, we can put him on the sin shirt list if he would like to.
Yes, sir.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, I'm Nicole Sauce from the Living Free in Tennessee podcast. John, tell us who you are, just for the people who are on other people's channels.
I have a little company called Special Operations Equipment. I've run it for 35 years, and I basically have just built everything I like doing into my business so that everything I do is in some capacity business, and figure out how to monetize it. And that's what I do. Basically, we U.S. manufactured nylon tactical gear, everything under one roof. We do everything from this building here.
Awesome. Okay, and on the topic of monetization, a short conversation with John can give you roughly 19,432 new ideas for how to monetize what you're doing. And a really good way to talk to him is to come to Special Operations Equipment. We have a swale. I'm just going to do it out of the chute. We have a swale workshop coming in just a week and a half. Billy Bond and William Bond are going to teach it. I'm very excited because they're talking about how to design them, showing you how to use the A-frame level. They have heavy equipment now to show you how to dig it with heavy equipment. But what if you don't have that? They're going to show us how to do it with shovels. And then we're going to go right back to using heavy equipment because that's way better. But sometimes it's a small area and it doesn't make sense to do the rental. And then we're going to go do classroom time, talking about the theory behind swales, talking about when to use them, when not to use them. A swale is not something you use everywhere. It's important to know it's a tool in the toolkit of your whole permaculture plan. So that's going to happen. Then we're talking about plant communities and planting them out. And then the next day, they're going to show you how to plant the swale. Because we're putting these in July in place at Special Operations Equipment, we won't be putting in some of the, all of the plants. But what do you do if the best time to dig your swale is July? Well, what you can do is you can ground cover it and sprinkle mulch it and make sure there's some irrigation so that it doesn't shift and change, so that it's ready for the plants at the ideal time. So we're going to show you a lot of really cool stuff. And if you want to go there and have that chance to have 19,452 new monetization ideas from John Willis while you're there, because he will be there, because it's on his place, then just go over to selfreliancefestival.com/swale and sign up. It includes camping on site, and we will be feeding you breakfast and lunch, and the lunches are going to be fabulous. They're put together by my buddy Chef Brett, who is a fantastic chef. We have organized cold lunches, and there is an AC cool-off area for people who get warm during the day if you need to escape. Yes, sir.
Even if you have no interest, I'm never putting in swales. It would be worth coming to this class just to have access to Billy and William with 100 people instead of 1,000 people. Yeah. And as far as access, you guys will have full access to the building. Anything you've ever seen in my videos, we can talk about. We have tons. I have 7 heat and air units literally sitting right here pushing air through. So we'll be able to cool you down.
Yeah, and that was something that we really thought about as we just went into this, was how do we keep them cool? We'll have class kind of early in the day, classroom time in the air conditioning at the hottest part of the day, almost like working with Mother Nature instead of against her.
You might get to see an IV fluids class.
Hey, Could happen. Okay, so today we've got like a whole bunch of people who know a whole lot about permaculture, freedom, and preparing for the things that are most likely to come. If you have questions, guys, do me a favor in the comments. Put the first few words in all caps. I'll star them and try to bring them up. If you've already put a question in that way, put it in again, because the comments are flying by so fast right now that I did not star them while I was going through that whole thing. And I'm going to start out with a question to Tag. Tag, what got you originally interested in being more prepared for things likely to come?
Yeah, that's kind of a two-parted answer. So I started actually prepping in about 93. So I've been at it a long, long time. Right as soon as I got out of the military, I was a radio guy in an infantry unit, so nothing special. But, I kind of seen a little bit of, tragedy and that kind of what started me. But what really got me into being free is I was an executive for a financial holding company that basically told me I had to mandate the thing for all my employees. And I just came to a point and said, you know what, I'm going galt. I'm taking my productivity somewhere else, stick it up your ass. And I went on with my life. And now I live 100% off grid, produce everything for myself. And so I'm living free that way. So it was kind of two parts, one, the world falling apart, and then the other thing, some company thinking they can tell me what, my employees have to do with their bodies, and I ain't playing. So that's why I did it.
Yeah. Patrick, what got you into it?
This has been a lifelong journey for me, Nicole. I'm a first generation American. My mom, came over here from the Philippines when she was young. She lived through the atrocities and horror stories that you hear about and read about, during the Ferdinand Marcos regime. So I grew up on these horror stories. That was a way of life for her. That the struggle to survive over there, that was just life. But today we call that preparedness, or we call it homesteading, or some of those things. So I just kind of grew up in that lifestyle. I kind of grew up that way. But for me, the trigger was in about the middle 2000s. I was taking an engineering job up in Denver. I was a young father, young family man, and we had a couple of back-to-back blizzards. And I'll never forget, I went up there with a Dodge Neon in a 1978 Pontiac Trans Am that I rebuilt from scratch from the frame up. Had no idea what I was getting myself into. And so 2 weeks into being snowed in my house, my baby's out of formula, my wife's out of cigarettes, where there's no milk in the fridge. I'm trekking to the store, in 2.5, 3 feet of snow. And when I get there, it's wiped out. There's no bread, there's no milk, there's no water. The only thing that's left is like the weird Pall Mall, Virginia Slim cigarettes, and like the weird stuff. And so I was like, you know what? This is never happening again. And now, bring it on.
Hey, Deep South Homesteads in the house. Hey guys, welcome to the show.
Hey,
we should get you on this show if you ever want to.
Hey Danny, hey Wanda.
All right. Okay, Billy, same question to you, because I don't think I've never asked you this question before. I'm curious. I'm going to ask John too.
Yeah, what got me into this is Michelle was into it long before I was. And we had been into it for, I'd gotten on board mostly in the preparedness area. And that's where I know a lot of these guys from Kansas. Whether it's Bobby, Tag, we all ran in the same kind of circles back in the day, but we've all been at it, for quite a while. But I'll tell you what really put everything in high gear was in 2008 when that thing fell apart. And the best job I could find was in third world countries. And even then, it was like Michelle was in college full time, being indoctrinated at the time. William was still a kid. And we were literally a step away from losing everything. And I prayed and I said, Lord, if I ever get my way out of this, because at that time you didn't know where the end was. I'm like, if I ever get myself out of this, it's not going to be being more polished than spit and more glitter than grit. I'm going at this thing full steam ahead. I'm going to know I will never, ever, ever take any of this for granted ever again. Yeah, so unlike Data over there, just like Data rather, you have this epiphany. And then you find yourself buying discount cigarettes because you can't, you don't have any other options.
It's all about the cigarettes.
A man's got to do what a man's got to do.
So there I was, working as I'm doing the best I can. And then when things turned around, everybody else I knew that made that same sort of vow went right back into the matrix. I didn't. And, because of it, I retired early. I did all the things. I'm doing the life I love. And then to echo what Nicole said, for anybody thinking about going to that swale class, when you meet people like Nicole and John, they literally, I thought I was really working at a high functioning level until I worked with them. Then I realized I get pushed even further than I knew. So much wonderful business advice that I've gotten from John, and wonderful advice about how to do a podcast and how to organize a pantry and how to do all these other things from Nicole. So it's been a joy to get to know them. So I just want to echo what John said a little while ago. The greater point isn't necessarily meeting me. It's meeting the other people that are going to be there and meeting John and Nicole, because honestly, because of them, everything in my life has gotten not just twice as good. I would almost dare to say, and I was tallying this up with William, I'd say 10 times as good. Also in the comments, Danny and Wanda down in Deep South, it's those connections that you meet with people in person. Tag, Bobby, who's also in the chat. All these people have been combat multipliers in my life. I know I strayed a little bit away from the question, but there was no way I was going to get on here and not give a shout out to all these wonderful people that have been nothing but blessings in my life.
Yeah, it's been fun watching this ecosystem of people develop. And one of the reasons I love seeing y'all in person as well as on these live streams is I have no idea who I'm going to meet next time we're together in a group, but it's going to be somebody like Patrick I'd never met before until June. And then I was like, Patrick's really cool. I want to talk to him more, but there's like 500 people here. So now we're talking to him on this, but it's really cool to start putting those things together. John, what got you into prepping? I'm not sure we ever asked you that before.
Red Dawn, Nostradamus, and Rambo.
Bam.
All right, Rambo will do that.
So I'm gonna drop. Yeah, no, it's just kind of like, we call it prepping. Grandma calls it Tuesday, right? There's not a farmer out there that's getting an attaboy for getting up at 4 a.m. before, and take care of the animals. That's just the job. And I always wanted to do that, right? I always thought I would be doing it kind of as a recluse in a cabin or a cave in Idaho or Montana, right? That's kind of how I pictured it. And I'd always planned to put a steel building up and put a loft. And one day, somebody, I don't even remember who pointed it out. They're like, I've heard you talk about that. You realize that you've done that. So, and as far as coming out to meet people, right? All these people right here, I haven't met Tag in person yet. The other 4 here are exactly in person how you see them on videos, right? And Bobby too, same thing. Like, it's rare that you meet a person like that. You bump into them, they don't look like you think they look. They don't give you the time you think that you're going to have. People drive a long time to come meet people, and then you're like, yeah, I don't even want to talk to this guy. So I think that's very cool. Like, what you see and what you perceive is how it really is when you meet them in real life.
Well, that's good to hear. I think that's all of our goals, is to be genuine and share the good and the bad. I'll share why I got into prepping. So does prepping lead to homesteading, or does homesteading lead to prepping? That's the question. Mm-hmm. I moved out to I've always been interested in finding out how things work under the hood. So from a food growing standpoint and prepping standpoint, I was always like, well, spaghetti sauce is good. I guess I better figure out how to make that by growing the tomatoes and the garlic and the basil and all of the ingredients and cooking them down. And then, man, that was hard. I think I'll just buy the sauce again, or whatever, for mayonnaise. I don't make mayonnaise very often because it's just easier for me to buy it. But I lived on a homestead for about 5 years, and I was listening to a podcast doing tomatoes, and I realized I was a prepper that day, because living on a homestead, what you don't want to have to do is just bip out to town to buy something.
Yep.
You end up planning things in a very different way. You eat, like I eat mostly seasonally or things I've preserved. I can go to the store once a month, or I can actually go less than once a month now and resupply, and it's fine. And that keeps me from having to waste 25 minutes there and 25 minutes back for a box of cookies or something. And I realized when I started listening to prepper stuff that I already did it. And some of these people had ways of doing it way more simply than I did. So then, of course, I listened to a whole bunch of people and refined the skill. But I think I came at it completely differently from everybody here, where I was like, well, I'm already a prepper, so I guess I'll just hone that skill. And it's been good for. That's why I ignored the self-defense part of it for such a long time, because I don't like to think people are ugly. Yeah, but that denial does not help me if I'm in actual trouble with an actual ugly person. So
we almost need a service where we just send people to attack your homestead, right? Kind of test the defenses, kind of open the eyes.
Jack said something really interesting on his podcast within the last 2 weeks, where he said, here's how you're going to defend your homestead against bad guys. You're not. If it's a roving person, this is how you defend it. But if it's somebody who means you ill, what they're going to do is they're going to study it in advance to figure out your habits. They're going to attack you at your weakest point, and their goal is to kill you. They're not trying to put you, but talk to you first. They just want to come in and kill you as quickly as possible and take what you want, they want.
That was his episode, how I would attack your homestead.
Yeah. And I think that's an important one for anybody who thinks that, their family of 3 can hold off an invasion by the U.S. government because they've done a bunch of training. Like, listen to that and pay attention to it. If you see how some of the recent carjackings have happened in our area that have resulted in deaths, it's been guys with guns from multiple directions swarm on the car and shoot the people and take stuff. And, I think I just read about one this morning. I don't know where it was, but, a dad and his kid were killed immediately. The mother was injured, and the sister of the mother killed the guy. But that's because he went in and was like straight up firing out of the chute, which is not fun to think about. But sometimes it's important to think about that, because if you see somebody coming towards your car with ill intent from far away, leave. I just talked to another person who 4 guys were attacking her car in New York City, and John probably knows who this is and has probably heard the story. And she just, out of habit, leaves a car length before her and the car in front of her. Yep. She gunned it and got out of the way. She said, and the light turned right at that moment. And those guys didn't take my car or me. So, yeah. Yeah,
it's much more just in your face now, especially at gas stations. If you turn on social media, you will see multiples of these happening every single day. That's why we're not driving the cars right now. For the last 2 years, I mean, in addition to they weren't maintaining the highways and interstates, but in the last 2 years, everything we've driven are the trucks. We've got bumpers on those trucks in case we need to push something out of the way, go through a glass wall. I mean, whatever it is, that's the no bullshit reason why we drive what we drive everywhere we go right now.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing and then for somebody, because again, I don't come from that defense standpoint to begin with. For me, it's been very educational to start thinking about these things. I actually, as a prepper, changed from the person that sees how far her vehicle can go before refueling on long trips to at about half a tank. I'm like, okay, I could stop and top it off and, that sort of thing. I was driving through Texas in May, and an alert came over my phone. Armed escaped prisoner on the loose, take shelter immediately. And I had done one thing stupid. I had followed my GPS instead of my original route because it was routing me around. So I didn't know exactly where I was. And so I called a friend and said, this is where it looks like I am on the map. Can you find out what's up? And they couldn't find any information. So I just decided because I was right at half a tank, not to stop. And I kept going all the way to my destination. And I found out later that guy ended up breaking into somebody's house, killing the whole family. And then they manhunted him into another state and eventually got him. But he could have just as easily, come up upon a weak-looking woman at a gas station refueling because I didn't have enough gas to get out of there and tried to attack me. And I was really thankful that I had that half tank of gas, because literally was exactly where that guy was, and he was determined to escape. He had a reason not to want to leave behind anybody to say where he was going.
There's a lot of schools out there, tactical response, Chris Costa's classes, Pat Mack, they're all teaching fighting from vehicle. And it's not just like, a lot of people have this idea that I'll just get behind the vehicle. Bullets go straight through a vehicle. They're like a magnet for it. And it's a false sense of security. And until you've shot through a window and know what those bullets will do and how to draw that weapon and not flag yourself or your passenger, it takes some doing. Like they in the Marine Corps, they used to say, for SFTG, muscle memory was 3,000 times. You have to do something 3,000 times before it becomes second nature. Small motor skills all go out the window. It's like finite, dance martial arts. It doesn't work as soon as you're hit. Like the tunnel vision comes in and all the finite movement goes out the window. So it's a skill that you do have to practice. And once you've done it, at least you know kind of what it looks like.
Yep. Okay, we got a question here from Bob Lester. Thanks for the super chat. Bob, can you get in contact with me? Because I've been trying to get in contact with you, Nicole at livingfreeintennessee.com. Okay, so who is the go-to person for off-grid solar design? Cash in hand and ready to build. I'm going to throw this to Tag.
Okay.
Yeah, I wish I could. I don't know that I can help with this because the truth is I did all my own. I've got a 300 amp service, big solar system. I weld with mine, but I bought the components and built it myself, so I don't know who to go to. I don't know where this person is. If they're close to me, I'll come help them.
Man, that sounds like the best person in this panel of Brady Bunch people that I see.
I feel like Bob can totally do it, but Bob runs a pretty big company. So I'm sure he would rather have some guys come in and turnkey this for him.
Yeah, we have a list of solar installers that we work with at one of the companies I work with. And maybe I can hook up with Nicole and get that list to Bob and we can figure it out.
Okay, Bob, reach out to me. I have another reason I want to talk to you anyway. So
get a hold of Nicole. We'll get you taken care of, Bob.
Yep. Awesome. Yeah. So Sean with Hack My Solar, Sean Mills, who's presented at my workshops and John's at the Self-Reliance Festival, he does an audit of your property or your home to see where you are right now, if you're already on grid, to talk to you about, first of all, ways to reduce your power usage so you don't have to build as large of a system, and sort of ways you can peel it back. So I've been peeling back my homestead bit by bit as my budget allows for probably 5 years now. And the first big change I made that made the most significant difference, aside from reducing power usage to begin with, was I installed a solar water heater. Mm-hmm. And so at this time of year, most of my water is heated by the sun. And then I have a propane on demand heater for the rest. That reduced my propane needs by $250 a year. Damn. Which adds up. Like, the thing has paid for itself in 2 years because that was before copper was insanely expensive. But I heard copper's coming down. So that, and that was just a real easy thing. And the other thing we're working on next is to have a solar pump water to a holding tank above my house, because my water source is below my house and has to go uphill, so that when the sun's not up, so I'm not putting a battery in the system, so that when the sun's up, it's pumping the water until it's full up at that tank. And then I pull from that tank, and it's not like I'm running, millions of gallons of water in the evening while I sleep. So that also allows me, when there's no power in my system, to have at least a trickle of water from gravity, so I can still flush toilets without using the bucket pour method and wash my hands without having to just have a vessel. So he's been really great to work with for what that's worth. And he's usually at Self-Reliance festivals, and Bob is usually at Self-Reliance festivals. They may have even met. So if not, though, Bob, I will make sure you know who he is.
Whatever happened to windmills, right? Can we not use windmills anymore to push water into a water tank for the higher point of the property and then run it back down through a hose? Like, you never, as a kid growing up, every movie that was in the West had a windmill, right? But I don't see windmills anywhere, not like that anyways.
You do at Hacks for the Homesteader, who just happens to be in here. They got an old windmill that used to do that very thing out at their place. Mm-hmm. Also, like, going back to that swale class and at John's property in particular, this is why, if you do have any kind of topography, you want to situate your water features as high in the landscape as possible. Because, like with that pond at the highest part, a ridge pond that John has at his place that we're going to tie swales into, every time you move that water, think about it. When you have energy enter your property, you have only three choices. You can capture it, at least for a little while, you can deflect it, or you can amplify it. Or you have the opportunity to do all three, like in John's place, where you potentially could. Now, this is going back to the windmill thing as well. where let's say you have intermittent wind coming through there. That might make sense in a place like Kansas, might even make sense in places like Tennessee. But in a place like, let's say, John's, where you have water situated as high in the landscape as you can, every time you bring that water from, let's say, this pond that's up high to the one down below, why can't it turn a turbine on the way there that's charging your batteries, essentially doing what TAG is already doing? Because I'm not familiar with your solar system, but if it's like any other, you're basically taking that solar energy, storing it in batteries, using it as you need it. Maybe you have net metering. You might even sell some back to the grid. Yeah, I was thinking there's no way he's doing that, but generally you could do all that with water. You can do it with wind. You can do it with solar, and they can all be on the same piece of property if done properly.
Yep.
Yeah, I have my water system's very unique. I don't know how many people can do this, but my wife can at the kitchen sink can say, I want to use rainwater today, I want to use pond water today, or I want to use the well today. And we there's times she's washing clothes with rainwater on one side of the house and dishes with well water on the other side. So I think water is a big deal. And same with energy. I'd put those two clear at the top. And I think they'll be, are going to get to a point where they're even more important, as time goes on.
You can even do it in I'm sorry. You can even do it in such a way, let's say in terms of water. Let's say you have a well, and let's say you're doing rainwater capturing from the roof, and let's say you even have city water. Well, there's no reason all of that couldn't go into a common manifold. And then you just turn the valve to whichever one you choose to use. I mean, it's simple, but very few of us ever do it.
Yep. Yeah, don't let those inspector people see that if you're on city water, because they get mad about it.
I have no.
They're afraid you're going to contaminate their water with your rainwater.
Well, they should probably keep their pressure running then.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
This is why I don't sell power back, and this is why I never connected to anything. Is there's never been a water line to run down my property. They don't exist, or a power line. It's never been on my property ever, forever in history, and it will never be.
Yeah.
How much water do you hold from rainwater? Like you have tanks, I take it?
Yeah, I've got a few different tanks. So right now I've got 7,700 gallons of rainwater. I've got a 100-foot deep well that also has a 1,750-gallon cistern. Gotcha. And then I also have a 2.5-acre pond that's 21 feet deep that I can also pump water in from.
Your cistern is a plastic tank or a concrete box, or what did you go with?
They're plastics.
Okay. Awesome.
Yep.
I saw somebody ask here, how do I get water up a hill that I need to pump up a hill without electricity and not enough drop for a ram pump?
They make the French have been using a method for a long, long time. And if you want to see it in action, check out Sean and Beth Doherty. They even wrote a book called The Independent Farmstead, and they use it pretty successfully out at their place. And it's something I want to replicate at mine too. I mean, theoretically, I know how to do it. There's a French name for it, and I don't recall the name of it right now. But basically, you're using that to drive it. Now, it doesn't happen quick, but you can basically drip water up a extraordinary distance using that method. The name escapes me, but if you look those people up, I'm sure it won't be hard to find.
Tag, you were about to say something too.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm a big solar fan, and I agree with the windmills. We want to put a turbine up, but the only reason I don't like them is the moving parts. When in solar, there just isn't any, and it's pretty easy. But I mean, I'm moving water right now uphill 660 feet without any problem. Any problem, zero.
Yeah, so, I'm assuming without electricity means not electricity service. It means no electricity service versus I'm not willing to use solar panels.
Okay.
But I don't know.
You're doing that with an electric motor pump?
Yeah, so I've got a pump down my well at 100 feet, and then it goes, right next to it's a 1,750-gallon cistern with another pump in it that then I'm powering from my solar system back to my house and other places, the gardens and different places.
I'm sorry, go ahead, John.
Is your pump in your cistern, or the water comes out and then hits the pump and pushes?
Yes, there's a pump in the well, and there's a pump in the cistern.
Okay.
Yep.
So one pump gets it from 100 feet underground up into the cistern, and then the other pump sends it 660 feet to the house.
And don't discount, if you're pumping it up to your house, don't discount how much water you can collect with the roof of your house. And I'm sure Tag can go into that. Even in areas that don't get much rain, I think it makes a lot of sense to look at rainwater collection over time, because if you get even, a quarter inch on that roof, twice a year, which is very little rain in an area. That would be a very arid place. You can collect some of it as long as it's enough to run down and into your gutters and into rainwater catch. And then you don't have to pump anything anywhere. It's right there.
We had 2 rains, 10,000-foot roof, all downspouts piped into the pond. That 3 million gallon pond was full in under 60 days.
Wow.
And overflowing. It was about 24 inches low a couple days ago. It rained overnight. It's already pushing out the culvert.
Yep.
It's easy to figure out. I mean, use it. There's even an online rainwater calculator where basically you're going to take the square footage of your roof and you're going to take the amount of rainfall that you typically, like where I live, it's crazy because it's exactly the same amount of rainfall we used to get in Texas, except we don't get it all at once like you do in Texas. But if you just take that little barn I have down the way, the equivalent, I think, of an Olympic-sized swimming pool lands on just 1,000 square feet up there. So it's a significant amount in just a small space.
Yeah, and I'm going to comment to unpopular truth here. When SHTF, you're going to be dragging water with your hand. Before we had all of this technology, how did we get water to our house? We used buckets, right? And so I was thinking about this last night because if I don't have power, I don't have water yet. I'm still in the process of making my water system more resilient. And it's at the bottom of the hill. So what that has meant in the past is I go get buckets of water. Well, how much water can I lift to carry up the hill reasonably if I'm having to cart multiple loads of water? I was thinking about this while canning, because you end up using a lot of water in canning, like washing the vegetables and all that. I thought, there's a reason that the buckets that people carried water in, those, the sticks were, like 2-3 gallons and not 5 gallons on each one. Because could I go up that hill with 10 gallons one time? Sure. Right.
All day?
5 gallons is a little, iffy, and 5 gallons on just one side is a pain in the neck. So I'm going to want smaller buckets. Think about that if your backup plan is to carry water.
The Bible also says the Lord helps those that help themselves. So based off of your comments, are you telling me that you don't have electricity right now? Because that's probably going to fail. Are you telling me you don't have solar? Because that's probably going to fail according to Revelation. So are you telling me that from your comments, you do every single thing by hand and you haul water every day? But I don't think that's what you're saying. Well, yes, you can say what you're saying, but I'm 50 years old. Every year I've been alive, there's some major catastrophe that's going to wipe us from the face of the earth. And if I'd have lived as though tomorrow was the last day, we wouldn't be here doing this, talking to any of you right now.
That's right.
Yeah.
Could I direct that at Tag and also Data? I mean, right now we're hearing a lot of concern, to her question to a certain extent. Like, okay, things jump off. You're already off the grid. Now let's just say the worst should happen, because I'm getting a lot of those questions through email. Let's say it's an EMP or something like that. How does yours? I'm going to ask what I think is a rhetorical question, but I know a number of people have been asking me. So why not ask the consummate expert who's actually been living this life for a while? Data, maybe you could weigh in on it too. So let's say some great calamity were to befall, like John was talking about. We keep hearing about all these crazy calamities that are supposed to happen. Let's just say the worst were to happen. How would your solar handle a situation like that? And is there some way to harden yourself against it?
Yeah, so an EMP is a pretty specific thing, and so you can deal with that. I have 8 EMP shields on my farm. I have 1 on my house, 5 on my solar system, 1 on my well pump, and 1 on my backup generator. And so I can withstand that just fine. But I think to that point too, if I lose it all and the solar goes out and all that, this is why I have rainwater catchment systems on every corner. My carry will be less, hopefully. But I can't plan for all of that. But I'm going to use technology today, because today it can make me freer. But Data, you got something you want to add to that?
Yeah, no. So basically, caveating that part, I mean, there are components, there's steps you can take right now. You can put an EMP shield on your car. You can put an EMP shield on your house, your apartment complex, your RV, whatever it is, whatever your plan is. You can take steps today to protect that. Like John mentioned earlier, you're not living in a cave. Right. You don't need to rely on flint and steel if you've got a Bic in your pocket. So, I mean, it's up to you. It's up to you. It's what
gallon of water. I'm sorry, go ahead.
We all make time for the things that matter the most.
Yeah, there was another comment in there about 10 pounds of water. Look, okay, let me talk about this. Is going right back. This isn't some infomercial. I'm just keeping it real. Look, your number one source to store water is the one place everybody forgets about. That is in your soil. For every 1% of organic matter you put down in that soil, that enables you the equivalent of an Olympic-sized swimming pool per acre for just 1%. So there are ways, if I'm sticking it down into the soil with swales and I have wells that are going into there, guess what? I'm recharging my aquifers. You also see another great thing that happens when you put in swales. You know what you have happen downstream? Once that swale seeps through the ground, it hits an impervious layer. Once it does that, it bounces right back out at you. And then you have, lo and behold, you have everywhere, you have, good night. What's that? What do you call it? I have water popping up out of the ground.
Springs.
Springs. That's exactly what happens. So you can reinforce the water carrying capability for your land just by putting it down in the soil. All the stuff you can't use immediately on the surface, put it in your soil. It's going to help your trees. It's going to help your means to eat. It's going to help your ponds that currently exist. And it's going to create springs down, and it won't be that far away, downhill from where you currently are. So yeah, we can go on and on about, well, this happens, this is going to happen. Well, do like Tag was saying a moment ago. You just created a combat multiplier by having that water in close proximity. Mm-hmm. Well, you make it even better if I'm storing it into the soil and it's popping right back out of the ground at me. Yep. That's exactly what we're teaching in these classes, and that's exactly what you're learning among all the people here. So yes, water is important, but don't dismiss the easiest ways to capture that water.
Okay, I want to hit this question before we move off of the EMP shield topic. Would an EMP shield protect against a solar flare, a Carrington event?
Yes, for lack of a better term, yes. So it's designed specifically, and if you look at the testing stuff that's on the website, there are phases of an EMP that simulate and act like the energy signature that's produced by a solar flare, or CME, a coronal mass ejection. And so identically matching those wave signs up, it will protect against that.
Yeah, and I can add to this too. You know, that I bought them because really for lightning.
You
know, the EMP is cool, but the truth is the chances of me needing them is going to be more lightning than anything. You know, the EMP shield, the way the device works, it's basically monitoring a system. It's shunting the overvoltage as it's monitoring. So that overvoltage can come from a lot of different sources, right? Just even dirty electricity. And so I did it to protect my $53,000 solar system, and that's my cost. I did the work myself. You know, I did it to protect that big, expensive equipment.
If I could weigh in on it too, you know, I'm a journeyman electrician, IBEW trained, been one for a long, long time. I've installed transient voltage surge suppressors in every place imaginable. I'm talking data centers, every car plant in just about America, numerous, and all of these things, which essentially supposedly do exactly what the EMP shield does, offer nowhere near the guarantee or capabilities that EMP shield. That's why they didn't seek me out. I went to EMP shield to ask if I could work with them just because of the guarantee that they offered, where, like Tag said a moment ago, that your number one threat is not an EMP, it's lightning. Right. So if I have a way, and also when I saw that their guarantee, I can't remember, was $25,000, which no other transient voltage surge suppressor on the market offers anywhere. They don't even offer a guarantee. They really don't. So when I saw that, I'm like, okay, I got to look in here a little bit more. I looked in even more and said, okay, these are people I want to work with, because anybody that reaches out to me, the answer is almost always no. Unless I like your product enough to where I went and sought it and looked out for it, I'm not going to be a champion for it. But in their case, when I saw the guarantee, saw the testing, saw everything about it, and having installed these things for years and years in all these different places, there was no other way I was going to go for this. Like I said, I know it's not an infomercial, but that's why I sought to work with EMP Shield, simply because of that reason.
Will solar panels be fried by an EMP? Because the EMP Shield protects everything on the back side, not on the other side, correct?
It protects in both directions.
It does. Okay.
Yes, it will protect in both directions. So your 12-volt side, you're going to install one on your 12-volt side, and you're going to install one on your 110 side. So you're going to be protected on both sides in both directions, upstream and downstream.
Yep.
And that's what the commercial ones in all these places I installed them, John, they don't do that. And they don't make that guarantee. Yeah, it's supposed to work if there's a lightning strike, but just like Tag said, my number one concern was lightning, because now everything is Kentucky Fried downstream if that happens.
Right.
The fact that they thought to go ahead and put a guarantee on it, that's what made me jump on board. But that's also what I love, is that it shunts it out. It doesn't matter what direction it comes from.
Yeah.
Is that it shunts it out, or basically takes it to ground long before it gets the opportunity to destroy anything downstream.
Yeah.
So that's what made me jump on board. And that's, like I said, I've been an IBEW trained electrician for years and years. That's how I made my money for years. And
Really
I've
cool story.
numerous of these things, and they work.
Just a few weeks back, the guys over at EMP Shield had a unit come back in. A testimony from a lady that was driving her car down the road in it while it was struck by lightning. So she's got scorch marks on the roof of her car, the hood of her car, where it took a direct lightning strike. She kept on driving. It popped a tail light. The EMP Shield did its job. She kept on going.
I see a lot of questions lately over the last couple months. The big push right now is everybody wants to tell you no about things, right? And it's the composite tiles, the tar tiles. Should you collect water? You can absolutely collect water from them. Filter your water. Always assume there's bird poop. There's going to be salmonella in it. Get you a countertop, Berkey water, whatever brand you want. I don't care. Every time I say Berkey, 20 dudes will be like, blah, 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 blah. Get whatever you want to get. Grandma collected water off of the tar shingles with the sand and the grit all over them for as long as I could remember, and watered all of her garden with it. Just do it. You're going to, and most of the people that are telling you not to do things, if you click on their name and you go look at their pages, they aren't doing none of it. There's no photos. The people squealing the loudest telling you what not to do are not doing most of it themselves.
That's right.
Just catch the water. When people say, hey, what's the first thing on property? It's almost always water. Sometimes it's fencing or security, but water. And then like we put structures in because we needed hay storage, but the real reason was so that we could capture water and divert water places. So just water. I mean, the difference between us, the United States, a first world country, and a third world country is a third world country. There's a ton of differences, but third world countries spend literally 50% of their manpower, their life, collecting water from places and fuel to cook the water, boil the water so that it doesn't kill them. There's a ton of stuff you can do. We've done it all along. Just like the huge thing right now is fodder trees. If you look in books that are over 7,500 years old, they called it tree hay. Like they did it. We are just so conditioned to pelletize feed. You have everybody telling you no. Collect your water. Put it in trash cans. Put it in buckets, IBC totes. The bigger your tank is, the less it costs to store per gallon. But just get what you can get and just use it as you need to use it.
They're selling food grade IBC totes in our area for $50, which is up over a few years ago, but $50 for 350 gallons, 250 to 350 gallon IBC totes will store some water. We have a number of questions about potable water, so I'm going to basically summarize them for everybody. We've got a question saying, can you use water from your roof instead of a metal roof, the tar roof, for drinking water? Can you use a natural swimming pond? Is it potable? And then that same person who asked about the roof, what filter is best? So let's talk about making your water drinkable or healthy for drinking. Who wants to start on that one?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I live it, so I can talk about it if you'd like me to.
Yeah.
Well,
makes
sense.
Tags UV ultra filtered setup.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild.
I believe that you got to filter it all. And so my water comes off a metal roof, assuming that I'm using the rainwater. Obviously the pond would not, but that would come off of a metal roof. From there, it comes down, runs into a pump and a pressure tank. It goes through a series of 6 paper filters, all designed to take out a different size of contaminant. From there, it runs through a UV filter and then pumped into my house. Our drinking water, then from there, we go through a Berkey. So So all of our drinking water comes out of a Berkey, but the shower water, the washing water, all of that stuff goes through all those filter elements and then a UV filter, and it's crystal clear. And actually, I'll tell you guys a funny story. I don't know if anybody cares about this, but I actually had from Kansas State University, I had my water to my rainwater tested, my well water tested, and my Berkey water tested because I wanted to see what components were in it. And some very interesting things come out of it. The first thing was, well, obviously the Berkey was the best because it got the final stage of filtering. But between the rainwater and the well water, the rainwater was mildly better than the well water, except my rainwater tested positive for fluoride. I'll just leave it at that.
Wow.
Tell me how that happened.
Dropping fluoride on us from the sky. Let's
I don't know. It makes no sense.
about this.
Put that in your
I don't know
tinfoil hat and smoke it.
I don't know
It's
why.
turning the frogs gay.
I'm surprised it didn't have glyphosate.
Damn it, Nicole!
Sorry. I'm just trying to get another strike on YouTube if I can.
You just got us all shadow banned. Thanks.
Let me hit something real quick. Somebody came in with a super chat, and thanks. They were asking about gray water and how to store it. This will be real quick. All you got to do when it comes to your gray water, and I'm actually going to retrofit my house, which wasn't set up that way. It's always best to take that gray water and, okay, you're asking about a gray water pond. Before you get to there, you always want it to go through a reed bed if you can. If you can do that, it'll take out a lot of, think about what goes down there in gray water. It's your body, it's your hair, it's all that stuff that sloughs off. It could be your laundry stuff. Well, if you have it go straight to a gray water pond, ask me how I know. It's going to stink. It's not necessarily bad, but it will stink. But if you can run it through a reed bed first, then collect it, it will be as crystal clear as you could ever hope.
Yep. I'd like to go back to water filtration. I think it's a really good idea to get your water tested as you're planning your filtration system so you know what you're filtering. Do you have heavy metals in your water? You're going to want to know that, right? Heavy metals, bad. So I did that, and I ended up with a Berkey filter and have had a Berkey filter for probably 13 years. Before then, I was buying water from Walmart for years, and that was dumb. And finally, I thought, I can just get this filter. I also have an irradiation filter, so an infrared one to kill organisms. Mm-hmm. And my current problem I'm trying to solve is that I have a lot of suspended clay in my water, which doesn't settle out very quickly. And so I've tried a variety of filters for that. And right now the solution is not what I want yet. So if Tag has advice for me after the fact, we need to talk, because I have like bad suspended clay. My spring comes from underground up, but where I live, we have an enormous amount of hydro pressure coming out of the ground whenever it rains. That's when I get clay, and I just burn through filters. I've tried a sand filter that's flushable. I have tried just sort of mesh filters to pre-filter before I filter, and then I filter again. So far, I haven't come up with the right solution. So I'm going to get a mason jar and time how long it takes the clay to settle this week so I can do the next step. So water filtration is no joke. It does take some time and thought, but the easy button is a Berkey filter. It's just over time you need to filter for other things that may be clogging up all of your plumbing if you don't get them out.
If it comes down to it, you could always do what John said a minute ago. I mean, you can always go old school. You can boil it. At the end of the day, if it comes to that, if you don't have any other means, there's a solar still. Those are real easy to make. Yep. You can boil it. Now, in an ideal world, we would love to have all these nice things. But people are worried about water quality. Look, if it comes down to it, you can always boil that water. It doesn't take that long to get all the junk out of it.
Strain it and boil it.
Yep. I boiled my water for a bit too. Yeah. There was a point at this homestead where I was carrying water from the sink to the stove, getting it hot and pouring it into the bathtub because my plumbing was so clogged when I first moved in. I felt like a pioneer, even though I had gas at my stove. But those days are behind me now. Now I turn on the hot tap and hot water comes out. It's super exciting. Yeah. I'm sure Tag can understand. It's like when you're building an off-grid home, you're like, whoa, I turned on the light and there's lights.
Yeah, Nicole, when I moved into this place after the company pulled its BS on me, we actually moved here a year before we wanted to. When I got here, the water wasn't even in. We showered outside for 11 days until I could get the water hooked up. so that we could take it. So I actually remember my first hot shower out here thinking, oh my goodness, first world problems. This is amazing.
Yeah.
Just amazing.
I often say people new to prepping need to go camping at just a normal like Army Corps of Engineers or state campsite for a weekend and see what you need there. And then go from that to one overnight backpack, see what you need for that, then 2 nights, and then 3 nights. And when you boil everything down to the basics, you either figure out that you're carrying way too much, or you figure out how not to carry so much, how much you don't need, and you realize surviving's not hard. What I'm really planning for is being more comfortable in a situation where services turn off. And then, I think it changes your mindset on where to put your resources. Staying alive is important. Staying alive, is a lot easier than we think it is. You got to stay warm, dry, and then cover your basic needs. And they're much more basic than we think. Netflix is not necessarily on that list.
Yeah, but discount cigarettes might be.
Yeah.
Hey,
they definitely are.
Virginia Slims are going to be hard to come by, Nicole.
Just grow tobacco.
I was curious, and I think Billy could probably answer this, not sure, but what chemical naturally adheres to clay? What ground element? Because you may be able to filter your clay through the ground a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, Billy, do you know this? Is there a natural element that bonds to clay that would take that? I would be fascinated to learn this answer.
Somebody in the comments said they think it is, and they're looking it up too. So
there is. Yeah. I've seen YouTube videos of it.
I really don't know, Tag. I've never had to deal with that before. Yeah, I'd be curious to know myself.
I think it took me a decade to figure out what my problem was. I was just spending a lot of money on the clogged filters. I was like, wait a minute, why is this happening? If I ask why, then I can solve it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but that's a good way to go. Is if I can add something to the water to filter it out, that would make sense. I'm also like, as part of the change from pumping with electricity up to the solar thing with the storage tank, I am tapping in rainwater, which will not have suspended clay in it, hopefully.
That's beautiful. So I think all of this is part of that evolution that you talked about earlier, and that natural progression of, does prepping lead to homesteading? Does homesteading lead to permaculture? Does permaculture lead to what's next? And I think they're all tied together. I think it's a beautiful evolution, a beautiful thing.
That's what got me out of data. That's an excellent point there, because what initially got me out of the quote so-called prepper movement was the fact that everything was mutually exclusive. I thoroughly believed from the very time I got in it that there had to be a unified field theory to all of this stuff, that there's no reason that all of them cannot be fused together. And somebody says I'm funny. Funny how? How am I funny? Funny is what? I'm here to amuse you? What am I, a clown?
I'm sending you a clown nose for the next live stream.
No, I mean, really, I agree with you, Tag. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Patrick. Sorry, all you guys look the same to me.
I know, right? We're like brothers.
Yeah. That's what got me out of it, is that within a lot of the preparedness circles, one guy would be in the guns, one person be in the gardening, one person would be into this, one person. And I was like, why can't they all be there? Why can't they all be? And when I was really involved in it, that's what I would see. There were very few people that were fusing all these things together like Bobby was at the time. By and large, it was like a fad, just like homesteading has become something of a fad, like Danny always talks about. There's no reason that if you're in this legitimately, that all of those things cannot be in a unified field theory, which to me is permaculture. And I think that's where it all comes together.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd love to comment on this if I can.
Yeah.
I think first pay homage to John a little bit for the, all prepping leads to homesteading, because that came a lot of years ago. But I totally agree with this statement. But I think there's another point to it too, which is you get into prepping for so long and pretty quick you realize all the stroke that's hold over your head. You're mandated, you got to buy this, you got to buy that, the electric company, the this, the that. And I think eventually you evolve to for me, I evolved to a place where I said, no more stroke. They're not going to hold nothing over my head, or at least to the best of my ability. And I'm going to go fight that stroke. And so that natural progression for me was to live free and be homesteading.
Yep. Prepping leads to homesteading, leads to resilience, from Dixie Living Homestead.
Yeah, I like that.
Except for that homesteading led to prepping for me. I did it the wrong way.
Yeah.
No, I think you did it the right way.
I did it my way.
That-
I did it my way. Okay. I've got a swale question somewhere. Where is it? So this question I'm throwing up, Lady Smith, I hope you're here still here. I'm not sure what you're asking, so I'm hoping you can clarify this in the comments, because I think you're trying to ask us about how to redesign a swale that cost you 3/4 of your first cut of hay, because I'm not sure why it did or what the issue is. So if you could maybe restate that, I will look for it in the comments. This one is Jay, who's already left, but we'll listen to the replay later. Have you ever heard of using a home equity line of credit to buy land and then rapidly paying that down? A lot of people are worried or trying to get land, not quite sure how to do it. The easiest way to buy land is to have money and buy land. But there are lots of alternative ways to buy land. You can have a contract agreement with the owner. A lot of people are selling it on contract right now. If you do that, get yourself a real estate lawyer or somebody who can make sure that what you're signing is reasonable. I've seen a couple people get into trouble with those just because they were so excited to get this piece of land. They didn't realize that the terms were so stringent that if you were a day or two late, you lost everything, right? Which is not what you want to get into, because things go wrong. Like the mail might not deliver your check that time and it's 5 days late. You want to make sure that that arrangement is something where you don't lose everything, because some people are out there to prey on this desire for people to get land. A HELOC is a way to do it. Home equity line of credit means you own one piece of property and you have a lot of equity in it, and many banks will give you a loan against that at a higher interest rate. Sometimes they're variable, sometimes you can lock them. The other thing about buying land is if you have 40% down, getting a traditional loan is possible. You want to work with somebody in a locally focused bank so they have an idea of what the land in that area is worth. And also it'll be more like a farm loan, so it's usually a higher interest rate, or it might be a shorter term with a balloon payment. So those are all ways that I know people are buying land. It's not unusual, though, that I hear people take a second mortgage on their house or a HELOC and buy it. It's just look at the terms of that and see if it makes sense, and what's the risk that you're going to lose your rear if you do it wrong. Any other thoughts on that, anybody?
Yeah, I got something on that one, because I bought a lot of land using a HELOC, but in fact, ask Hacks for the Homesteaders up here in Kansas. I bought land many times over just by doing one thing. And I'll encapsulate it for anybody that's interested out there. Go to Craigslist at the time. And if you find, let's say 5 to 10 to 20, usually not more than that, and it's a for sale by owner, they already know that unless you have 50% down, bank's not going to loan you the money on that land. So here's where it's an advantage to you. 9 times out of 10, if it's a person that, let's say, has 100 or 1,000 acres, they're selling off that little parcel of land because they got themselves in the truck payment that they can't afford. So here's how you solve that. And it's going to hit right on to what Nicole said. I would go to these people, and this isn't a one-off. I've done it many times. Go to them, meet them at the land, and say, look, all right, I'm going to give you a full asking price, provided it's not too ridiculous. But here's how it's going to go down. I'm going to give you, let's say it's $30,000 for this land. But I'm not going to pay any interest, and I'm going to have a real estate attorney draw it up to where I pay you $500 a month. I'll give you $500 down, no interest. I'll have it brought through a real estate attorney and make the payments through an escrow company. So let's say it's $500 a month. Well, I'm paying $515 with the escrow money that I got to pay, and I pay that off faster than the old boy that's out there buying an $80,000 pickup truck that he can't afford. So I solved the problem for the person that was selling off that piece of land. Like I said, every single time it was that same thing. He got himself in there, or his old lady ran off with a go-go dancer. Whatever the case may be, he needed money in a bad way. And if you can solve their problems, you can get this land for next to nothing. But real quick, to Nicole's point, you always have your real estate attorney draw it up to where if I miss 3 consecutive payments. So if you miss January, February, you make the March payment, and then April rolls around, that old boy is saying, well, hey, I get the land back. Well, no, you don't, because I got to miss 3 consecutive payments in order for you to be able to take this back. I'm not saying that as a means for you to get over. It's a means to protect yourself. just
Yeah.
in case you found yourself with the sweet and sour sniffles or whatever the case may be, and you couldn't go to work and maybe you didn't have any money in. But I bought a lot of land on the cheap, handshake deals, and they exist out there.
Make sure you use your lawyer, not their lawyer.
Yep. And if they use their lawyer, have your lawyer look at the agreement. And sometimes your lawyers, here's the thing you need to be ready for. Your lawyer is going to say, these need to change or you should not buy that property. And then their lawyer is going to say, I'm not changing that. And then you're going to walk away and it's going to hurt your heart because you were so excited about this piece of land. But I'd much rather have a hurt heart because I was so excited about a piece of land than get into an arrangement I can't sustain over time. Yep. And then lose the land too. And then my heart's really going to hurt and my pocketbook as well. Yeah. What's the best filter for iron for the whole house? Iron in my water is bad. I like the iron in my water because I need iron and it comes through my water. But I'm a weirdo. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Would an RO filter do that? I don't have an RO filter, so I do not know.
Yeah, they make systems that'll take the iron out of there. I don't have iron in my water. My well actually tested 0 for iron, which was interesting. I would anticipate it'd have been high iron content, but they make filters and systems to pretty much deal with everything.
Yeah.
I just didn't have to.
Yeah. I just have to clean the toilets on the regular or they will turn iron colored here.
Yeah. Iron, clay, dingy film to it.
Yeah, that's what happens.
I swear, those are iron stains on the toilet.
Exactly. I did see somebody saying starting homesteading with having debt is scary because it puts you just one injury away from losing it. I think that's relative and that's a decision everybody can make, right? A lot of us buy homes with a mortgage and if you're smart, you get a mortgage that's way less a month than you quote unquote can afford. And you put up savings so that you can cover those payments if it happens. I think that's no different for a homestead. Some people are not in a position where that amount of risk is worth it. And that's totally a personal decision. For me, I have a mortgage on my homestead. It will be paid off in 2024. And I've been here for 15 years and I have been, rehabbing the property and learning how to actually grow my own food and livestock and all of those things for that period of time, which has been very valuable for me and worth the fact that I had to pay interest on a mortgage and I have a risk of losing it if I don't pay the mortgage. On the other hand, my mortgage is super low because I got this property for a very good price because it was it had a dilapidated house on it. Somebody said earlier, buy something with a dilapidated house on it and it'll be cheaper. Mm-hmm. A word to the wise, the inside of my house does not look nice and it's 15 years later though. So it can take longer to fix a house than you think.
Work in progress.
Yeah. I think to their question though, what they asked was, should they take a home equity loan out? And which means that loan would be against their current property, not against the property they bought.
Yeah.
So that debt against the property they bought is really unsecured. And regardless of what happened, probably wouldn't be taken. I'm not, just in reference to, to their question.
They'd lose their other house.
Yeah, right. So they're taking the loan out against one property in order to buy a different property.
Yeah.
Which, I can certainly see some value in that. I don't have any debt, but, I paid cash for my place. But I'm to tell you guys, land is the only thing I would go in debt over.
Yeah.
I don't have any debt today, but if the 80 behind me came up for sale and I couldn't come up with the cash, I would do what I needed to do.
That's generational wealth. That's stuff that's going to pass down. It's going to allow you to do other things. If you bought that 80, what could you sell the 24 in 5 years? Yes. There's really two diversions in homesteading. You have homesteaders that are dirt poor, dirt cheap, won't take any risk, and won't work to pay those mortgages. So of course that's all. It's the poverty mindset, and that's not all of them, but somebody's going to take an issue here with it. And then you have the guys that work and run businesses and have enough money to have a homestead in any manner to look like whatever you want it to look like. We bought property when I want to do something. There's several times a year that my bank account's at zero. Yeah. And that's when you see me do the most and perform the most. I know that I have to make money. And I'm going to work literally 20 hours until I fall asleep. And then I'm going to wake up in 3 hours and work another 5. I work 7 days a week. I know people homestead because they don't want to work. I get it. But there's a whole bunch more people they're the polar opposite of that, and they will perform when they have to perform. But most of the people giving the advice, not all of them, but most of them, when you look at their stuff, they're not living what they're telling you.
Yep.
Amen to that. Hey,
the ones squealing the loudest, they never have a life that I go, man, I'd like to live that guy's life.
And to the point of using your own lawyer too, this person just said, I signed a lease to purchase on acreage, started rehabbing the farmhouse, finished the barn, and then the owner canceled the contract. I lost my arse. Used their lawyer. Right. And if you had used your lawyer too, which costs money, they would have said, it looks like they can cancel this at any time for no reason, which is probably what happened there. And they realized that the land had increased in value because of what was put into it. And I've heard a lot of, be really careful with the contracts you enter into. Because it's literally a matter of reading them, understanding them, and asking yourself, how can I get screwed by this?
Right. Just like I don't know how to build special operations equipment. I don't know how to look over a law contract with any. That's exactly why I'm going to use my lawyer. I have a younger brother who just happens to be a real estate attorney in Kansas. And it was his advice that told me to put 3 consecutive months, because also to the seller, they're thinking, okay, I got that $500. It's going to knock a chunk off whatever car payment I have. But at the same time, he's thinking, or she, in whichever case, they're thinking, okay, go ahead. I see the improvements you're making out there. They're salivating like Pavlov's dog, hoping that you don't make it. But that's why you put those little things in the contract. And like John said, make absolutely sure, positively sure, that your lawyer is doing what's in your best interest. And that's how you insulate yourself. So you give them the illusion of security on their end. Meanwhile, they're probably going to overlook that 3 consecutive month part. Every time I've done it, they've overlooked it. Now, I've never missed any payments, but that's not the point. You got to make sure you cover yourself. And I see John Bush is in the house. He said extremist. Hey, John, extremism in defense of homesteading is no vice. And by the way, when you're out this way, make sure you stop at the Jungle Palace of Love after you hang out with those down there.
John Bush and I just embarked on a new little alliance where I've always done webinars for my members. And I'm now doing it with the Live Free Academy. So my first one is on Sunday because I was watching the shepherdess. She was showing how the beef in Texas is being sold. And so what's going to happen with those cattle is they're going to go to feedlots. They're going to get grown out. They're going to hit the commercial market. And beef price will probably go down, actually, as a result of extra beef on the market. And that means if you are somebody who knows how to take care of beef when it's cheap, you can go buy it if you eat commercial beef. And then you can preserve it, because what happens next is about a year later, when farmers need to buy stock again, there will be less beef on the market in the commercial market. And what do you think happens to the price after that? It goes up. So you can already see the tendency. This isn't 100% going to happen, but it's a trend. It's how we look at markets. Looks like it's probably going to go down. And I was like, you know what I'm doing for my webinar this month? I'm going to teach people how to can beef, because then you don't have to buy a bunch of chest freezers and keep those going necessarily. If you don't already have that set up, you can can them. They're shelf stable. So I'm doing a webinar through the Live Free Academy on Sunday at 4 p.m. for anybody who wants to learn that. It does cost money. It's $47. That's at livingfreeintennessee.com/canning is what it is. And it's also a link on my homepage if you want to get signed up for that. I'm going to teach you, even if you've never canned before, you will know how, step by step, how to pressure can beef, what supplies you need, food safety issues, how to store the canned food. And then in August, I'm going to do another one on how to cook with your home canned beef so that it's tasty, because it's one thing to have the jars, but if you don't use the jars, it's no good. And then that's a great way to tap into just a market dip, like we always talk about. So thanks, John, for jumping in and reminding me I should talk about that.
Hit the thumbs up, y'all.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, it's now time to roast Jake Robinson, who has the following comment, and you guys can tell me which one of you is the best one to roast him. Understand that Jake is a known quantity, and we roast Jake all the time. We torture the guy. We make fun of him. He's actually a super cool dude. Will help you with anything. I've learned a ton from him about freeze drying and some other things. But here's what he says about EMP shields. So it's an objection to EMP shield. Only problem with EMP shields, and especially their guarantee, is it's easy to guarantee, because if there is an EMP, how are you ever going to get your money back? They have a no risk offer on a guarantee. Okay, who wants? Is it going to be Billy? Is it going to be Patrick?
EMP shields are not that expensive, just for the coverage for the lightning. I mean, even if you only look at them as lightning, they're not that expensive.
No. Now, compared to other lightning arresters and, like Billy mentioned, TVS's, any of these products that are on the market, it's right in line with all of them. So in terms of getting your money back on a lightning strike, you're going to do that 10 times over. Protect your equipment. On an EMP, it's better to have than not need it, and than need it and not have it.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jake, if lightning strikes your house and the EMP shield fails, because it also protects you against lightning, they are still in business and you can still go after them. Patrick, what does that mean the guarantee is?
$25,000 of coverage of anything that gets past the device, that destroys anything past the device. They're going to replace that free of charge per device, per incident.
Per incident, $25,000 for anything that gets past the device in a lightning strike. Jake, does lightning get near your house? I know where you live. I know what has been through my house in the last, 2 weeks. So that's my primary interest in EMP Shield is the lightning protection, because I got expensive coffee roasting equipment that I don't want fried. I don't want to have, not only do I have to replace it, I got to wait for the manufacturer to make it if it gets fried. That would be horrible.
How much was that welder in your garage? How much was that deep freezer full of meat? How much was that, fill in the blank, whatever it is that's plugged in the wall, your computer, your router, your network server, whatever it is, how much is that worth to you for a lightning strike?
And how much is an EMP shield again?
You can get these things. I think John and Billy have some codes out there that'll knock some money off of. I think you can pick these things up for like $330, $350.
Yep.
And you would spend, that's exactly why like I said, EMP shield didn't come to me. I've been a journeyman electrician with the IBEW for well over 2 decades. And I've installed these things with zero guarantee in some of the most consequential places in America. And not one of them gave a guarantee. They didn't seek me out. I sought them out and said, hey, and then I just happened to know some of the people. I mean, it was a weird freak incident, but honestly, that's exactly why I work with EMP. But instead of worrying about the EMP, worry about your most dire threat. And I've given this example before where I was on a range in the Army. I was so proud of myself for shooting 40 out of 40. And then as soon as I get off there, the sergeant who was standing behind me as one of the range managers says, that was good shooting there, Bond. But I got to know, when the 50 meter and the 300 meter targets popped up, you shot the 300 meter first. Why? And I said, well, because that way I knew I could shoot the 50 easy. I just want to take careful aim on that 300. And he says to me, and I'll never forget it, he says, well, you're thinking like a competitor. You're not thinking like a soldier, because you would shoot. If you had any sense at all, you would shoot the most consequential threat, which is the 50 meter threat. Well, it's the same thing with this. I am going to worry about lightning long before I am an EMP. That's my greatest threat. That's the one I'm worried about most.
Aim small, miss small. That's right.
Yeah, can I address him? Because I think there's another super big point. He just came back up and said, okay, I give lightning, yes. In the event of an EMP, Bud, you have way bigger problems to worry about whether or not we're going to fix a refrigerator. Okay, so forget about that. The EMP shield is monitoring a system for overvoltage. There's lots of different kinds of overvoltage, not just lightning, right? There's many different things out there that can cause that, and we warranty against all of them. So quit worrying about an EMP. Protect your house from lightning, and the cool news is you'll thank us for it later if something else ever happens.
I'll never
go ahead. Throw in there too. People are saying, well, if it happens, you're not going to be able to go out anywhere. That's not the point. I'm in the preparedness. I just need to get home. That's what I need. And like John said, if push comes to shove, if I'm in my Dodge, woe to anybody that's in my way, because you're going to be part of the surface if I had to. It is not to go out for groceries that I can't get afterwards. It is to get myself either to my bug out place or get myself home.
It's the same conversation as I won't buy Bitcoin or crypto because the power might go out and it's gone. your dollars aren't going to work either. And those are the same dudes that'll be like, well, silver, gold, silver, gold. I get it. But when you push them, they don't have that either. They've got a stack of this. They're always the loudest. They're all over the internet in all of those conversations, but they're not doing what they preach. It doesn't. Where do you buy silver? And when you really get down to the conversation, they're buying $50 of silver a week. It's the same shit.
Jake asked a question. He said he still didn't understand how they guarantee it from EMP. So that's pretty simple, Jake. When they tested it originally, they tested it to the known energy signature that is released by an EMP when it's detected. And so when they sent it to the testing laboratories, those were the specifications, military specifications, and the energy signatures that they tested it for. So that's how they can guarantee it for EMP protection.
Awesome. Okay. I'm gonna now for something completely different from questions from earlier. Who is a good and reliable source for seed? Besides saving your own, I suppose.
At this point, you need 10 lines of supply for everything. It's always been 3. Whatever your primary vendor is, you need to know 3 more. But at this point, that's even unreliable.
As far as the seeds also, there's a lot of people that are, some of the people that were real reliable, I don't know if Baker Creek was ever really that reliable, but man, you are hearing some horror stories out there. Deep South Homestead even talked about it. Michelle has had the same problem, that all of these well-known seed companies, there's been some really strange anomalies that have happened as of late. So as far as reliability, try a local seed saving thing that you have. Public libraries, believe it or not, have seeds in some of their catalogs. You have seed exchanges. And some people are claiming, there was a lady that I sent Kushaw squash seeds through the mail to. She's had luck, but there's been others that have claimed that they are radiating these seeds through the U.S. Postal on the way.
Oh no,
that's the case, but maybe that's why these seeds ain't coming up.
Yeah, I've definitely had some germination issues for seeds I sourced through the mail. Most of my seeds I don't anymore, except for we're getting 50-pound bags of pasture seed. And where we're sourcing them is places like the Farmers Co-op and stores nearby, and then we ship them if we need to. But most of what we've gotten in for our food, for our vegetables, because we're only feeding, a few households, that's almost all seeds we've saved. I buy a few packets at a time. And then what happened in Tennessee, if you're in the sort of the Freedom Cell network, what happened is that one of our people who works restocking shelves for an outside vendor at Walmart saw Walmart throwing all their seeds away for the season, which is normal. They throw them away. And she got 4 toilet paper boxes, like cube of toilet paper full of seeds. And those have been all filtered back in as much as we can to homesteaders here because they're getting rid of them. Excuse me.
Dogs.
My dog just went nuts. But that was loud. Anyway, so she filtered them back in. It's okay. I don't know what that was about. There's a dog and a cat, and the cat's alive. I was afraid that cat was going to not be alive, but it's alive. So she filtered them back in,
never to piss you off.
There are opportunities like that all over the place. I think every year somebody dumps a big box of seeds off at my house just because we have an awesome network. So
as things become more scarce and people become more desperate, predators will take advantage of that. And a lot of times you'll be like I see it pop up all the time on Facebook Marketplace and in these groups, seed, right? Awesome. What are you buying? Like I just had a dog delivered here, and the guy that he drove it here from North Carolina. He goes California. He does everywhere, right? He said people are paying to have their dogs transported, and then they're ghosting. They're buying $5,000 dogs, $10,000 dogs, paying $1,500 for transport. The guy goes, picks up the dog, sells the dog somewhere else, and just ghosting, like all over. Like there is shit happening that is like, we see the crime, but it's getting closer and closer. It's near you every day. There's more and more of it happening. So buying stuff through the internet, like you don't know what you're going to get. They could be sending you, they could send you some invasive stuff for all you know, and it like reputable dealers, people we think are as reputable, just, be aware of that when you see a good deal. It's just like the contract. They do things, they don't think it through. They do it out of emotion. And when we're about to do something dumb, we generally know it. We just hope that it works out well.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I saw, so that Presto canner, that electric canner that you posted that was available again, I was super excited. And I just looked around and I found one online for $59, brand new. And I did not buy it. You know why?
Because it's not, yeah.
Because there's no way that that's really going to get me what I want. That's like when you see one of those Facebook ads. And so I didn't buy it.
Yeah. It's the same thing. Every time I post that, somebody will put a link up to one that's $100 cheaper, but they don't ever look at it. It's not a pressure canner.
Yeah. And Presto makes pressure cookers. Totally different thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every time you try to, there's something that's the great deal. It's usually not. Sometimes it is, but for the most part, it's not.
Yeah. It's kind of funny how that works. Okay. Question. Do you all see an opportunity to do a large-scale organic compost operation?
Ooh.
We need William for this one, right?
Ooh.
Yeah, well, okay. Do you see an opportunity for a large-scale composting operation? Absolutely, but you ought to start small scale, and that's the chicken tractor on steroids, or it's the 18-day compost pile. Now, my son, William, he is the best I know of when it comes to composting, but check this out. Can't go into all the details right now, but one of the things that we're employing right now is to be able to do that and to put what we already know on even more steroids. So large-scale composting operation is going to go great, especially right now. There's a documentary that everybody should check out. It's called Biosludge. It was produced by Mike Adams. And he's basically talking about in this documentary how all this great compost that they're giving away, like I used to go all the time to Lawrence, Kansas, and I would pick it up when I lived up there. They basically take that wastewater, they stick it in there, they make compost. Well, now all of a sudden you got a bunch of people that are, and I better say this carefully, that are medicated. And through the composting operation, a lot of your toxins are tied up in medium and long chain carbonic acids. Well, we're also finding out, and Mike Adams has proven through this, through the research that he's done, that some of this stuff is actually surviving that composting process because, number one, they're not making it like I do. I'm not sure they're making it in an 18-day hot compost method. When you use a longer method of compost making, some of those toxins actually make their way through. So you got to be asking critical questions as to whether or not you want to use this stuff. So start small, and before you go into a large-scale compost operation, check out probably the best compost producer on the planet, and that is Carl Hammer at Vermont Composting. And he was the guy that basically invented the chicken tractor on steroids, except he's doing it on a much, 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 much larger scale. But he produces probably the best bioactive compost on planet Earth. Start small, though. Get good at the small stuff, then worry about doing something bigger.
Be aware, too, there's some huge gardening YouTube channels who are using the same vendors that are cooking the same compost. They're putting it in their row houses and it's killing their stuff. And these are like known vendors that they have done. They've gotten loads for 4 years in a row. And this year, all of a sudden, it's just destroyed all their stuff. So, I mean, be aware of it.
Hey, Billy, Spags had a question for you. He was asking you about growing melons on his land over the top of lateral lines. You see that one, Nicole?
No, I'm getting there, but
There's
go ahead and ask it. I'm 23 behind right now, trying to find what people, all caps on your questions. It goes faster if I can tell us what to look at it. If you're just talking to each other, no caps.
So what, did Bobby become an overnight racist? He's got to ask the black dude in this panel about watermelons.
He sure did.
No, I'm just kidding.
Well, you guys know Spags is unfiltered, right?
Yeah.
That's what I love about the guy.
Right, great guy.
Yeah,
I'm talking about Roots and Refuge. That's the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, Roots and Refuge, yeah.
Well, it happened with us too, John. We got in a bind and we went and bought some of that bag stuff, and we did a side-by-side comparison of the compost we made compared to that bag stuff. So it happens even to the best of us, but we know how to remedy this, and we're already doing it. But not everybody has that skill, and not everybody knows how to do that. And frankly, money's tighter than it's ever been. But I'll tell you what, we better all start thinking about, when you consider the nitrogen deficiencies we have right now, we better all start thinking about clever ways in which to get fertility on our property. Easiest way is learning how to make compost. It can be the long process. It can be the short process. We cover how to make the 18-day on our YouTube channel. We show you how to make the 30-day. And there's also the easy way where you just kind of stack it up in the forest. All of them are just as effective. But these days, you better be watching where you get a lot of this stuff.
I like the Living Traditions Homestead channel. I watch quite a bit of their stuff. What's the low manpower input way of making compost, right? Like, we have compost places around in Nashville, and they have drum grinders. I mean, that's a $100,000 piece of equipment, 60,000 used, and it's broken.
Yeah. And I use rabbits. That's why I keep doing that.
Yeah, oh, got you. Yeah, we have 100 rabbits, and like that's a non-exaggeration. There's 100 rabbits here.
Yeah.
And that's all we use. We use them for dog food, and we use them for rabbit food.
Yeah. So I have never had rabbits on the homestead till about a year ago. And then I didn't actually use their poop until this year because I didn't have a process in place of collecting it that worked. And we have some cages that are up for our breeders. And we have cement mixing trays under them. And then I have a second set of empty cement mixing trays. So I grab one out, put one in, and then I go use that manure anywhere. And since I started doing that here, the fertility has been off the charts in my garden. I've always composted and put stuff back in, but that rabbit poop's really putting it over the top. I love it. I'm a new convert to rabbit poop at this point.
Let's not forget the composting you do in place, which is what John is basically setting his place up for.
Yeah.
Now imagine, going right back to that swale workshop, imagine you have a swale, then you have another swale. Think of the things you can do between that swale. Do you want to grow trees? You can alley crop, which means basically putting crops in between the swales, or you can do silvopasture, which is exactly what John, I think, is planning on doing, whether it was sheep and a number of other things. So now all of a sudden, you've taken that interstitial area between your productive trees, and you've now created a combat multiplier to build soil and composting in place. That's exactly when you do high density grazing or management intensive grazing. That's all you're doing is composting in place. That's really it.
You know, we can run all the gray water out of this building into that swale in the back, at least. It's downhill.
Yeah.
We can push every bit of gray water every day out of this building into that back swales back there, Billy.
That's exactly what we did in Texas at our other place, where we still have our land in Texas, which, by the way, I bought with the very same methods I was describing a moment ago. That's exactly what we did, John. We would take everything that came from the washing machine, everything that came from the sink, everything that came from the shower. We didn't even run it through reed beds. We ran it straight in the swales, and the results have been astonishing.
Yep.
So we have a mountain of wood chips back here. Like, all of the wood chips were dumped here. We used county wood chips under the electric lines, which were sprayed. Everybody said nothing will grow. We used we got our tree guys who we're buddies with now. None of that stuff is sprayed. They run it through. We have 1,000 dump trucks worth of wood chips on the property. This was a gravel pit. There was no dirt here. But we have big 2 tractor scoops, 6-foot bucket tractor scoops, skid steer scoops of wood chips. And then we just kind of mounded them into plateaus. They're about 24, 30 inches tall. We planted fruit trees in every one of them. And people squealed and they said, that won't work. There's no way that'll grow. And they're growing. And then I put 3 pumpkin seeds on each side of each one. And people said that won't grow. And some of the best pumpkins on the property right now and I haven't even put rabbit manure. We didn't sprinkle soil in there. It's literally just chipped up wood chips. And we have stuff growing all over. Everything that people have told me you can't do, we just do it just to kind of see. So I see people saying put fish in their gardens. Absolutely. I take a small submersible pump and put it in my aquaponics system, and I push that water once, twice a month to my raised bed gardens and also to my trees. I also fill my aquaponics system back up with chlorinated city water, and I've got 4 bubblers, and I assume it bubbles enough that it off-gasses. We've never run pH. We've never run chemical balance of any kind on any of my aquaponics system. I water 90% of my property is probably watered with chlorinated city water, and everything works for us. And I always wonder when people tell you that you can't do these things, if they're just repeating it, right? There's a lot of different ways to clean cast iron. There's a lot of different ways to bake, but everybody tells you to do it this way. And when you ask your mom why, it's because grandma did, great grandma did, but there's 100 other ways to do the exact same stuff. I think so many people get caught, and they don't want to do this stuff. They just want to read about doing this stuff because they feel some kind of accomplishment by getting in the forums or interacting in videos, and they don't actually even try any of it.
Mm-hmm.
I wish there was a way to help people with this mindset let go of that fear. They can steal rabbits when the shit hits the fan. Better to know how to compost. You know what? It's a great idea to know how to compost. So that's not a bad message. But that first part of that thought, if we live in a situation where they are stealing your rabbits, composting is about the last thing you're going to have time for.
Yeah.
And worrying about that right now and then not having rabbits and not learning how to grow your own meat seems like a huge waste of time to me.
As far as stealing things from people, if we're talking actual, there is no more rule of law. I mean, you even saw it during the lockdowns. You had sheriff departments out here saying, hey, you better prepare to handle your own shit because we're not coming. Yes. The only thing that keeps the guy at the grocery store, guy cuts you off at the grocery store and you flip him off or cuss him out rather than just drive away. Literally, the only thing that keeps people from killing people every day is the fact that law enforcement might do something about it. If you're going to some place to steal some rabbits, you're only going to do that a couple of times. I mean, ODA teams go in and kick doors all the time. Every 10th operation, somebody's going to take a fucking round. Like if your plan is to go steal, it's going to be some kid sitting out there that's just going to shoot your ass and they're going to feed you to pigs.
Yes.
Okay. I've got a really great question. I love this one. What is the first thing beginners should do on a new piece of land?
Oh.
Does that depend?
Oh yeah. I'm gonna say there's this debate in permaculture as to whether or not it should be water or access. I'm a champion for access because I don't care how much water you have if you can't get to it. So access and then water. And then think about your basic needs. But going back to what John said, let me just hit on this real quick because I know other people want to weigh in. And you brought up Spearco a while ago regarding, protecting your homestead. You know what? There is a crass vulgarity in theft. 9 times out of 10, the people that engage in it really don't have a whole lot of sense to begin with. Or that idiot out there that says, I got a gun, I'll go take what I need if things jump off. Okay. Well, when it's a person like me, I'm going to go through the 5 principles of patrolling. I'm going to go through planning, recon, control, security, and common sense. That's how I would do it if I was going to wipe you out. That's how I would do it. But John Q. Dummy out there who's thinking his best option is theft isn't going to go through that. So they're pretty vulnerable idiots when they come after your stuff. So keep that in mind as well.
We give rabbits, every time somebody comes here and is like, can I buy rabbits? I'm like, open your trunk. I'll fill it up. Don't have to steal shit.
Just totally going to get some rabbits for you.
Come here and pull some weeds for an hour, and I'll pay you however you want paid.
Yeah.
You'll pay in rabbits?
I'll pay in rabbits.
His rabbits are awesome because he tractors them. He doesn't separate bucks from does, and they just somehow there are babies.
Always.
Nobody eats the babies. The babies live and become more rabbits.
We've got 175-pound dogs. Like we don't buy dog feed. Everything here. And when we started feeding the 2 Pyrenees dogs, raw, they act 3 years younger. Like they're 6 years old right now, 7 years old. Man, they hop around like puppies all the time now.
Once again, everything they tell you not to do when it comes to a lot of this stuff, like John was saying a moment ago, is wrong. everybody will give you all this crazy specific advice that you have to do with rabbits. Well, he's not doing it, and it's very successful.
If you want to see the craziest ones are the rabbits and the chickens in these rabbit groups and these chicken groups. If all this stuff didn't work, how do we have the genetics today? Because grandma didn't have, baby saver wire and all this other stuff. I mean, yeah, it's nice to have, but great grandma didn't have that stuff. And that's where your genetics came from. It came from past history. If it didn't work then, it wouldn't be here today.
Yep. And Jay Tharp, it's Jack's Bourbon Cooled Sumatran that you're looking for at hollowroast.com for the liquor cooled. So somebody wanted to know a specific coffee question.
Pull weeds for rabbits. Absolutely. My weeds are 6 feet tall. I chop them down, break them up. We've just put in 300 trees for tree hay for rabbits. We're putting in more willow and more hybrid poplar. And then when William was out here, and Billy, they're like, there's tree hay. Like everywhere around here, we could feed to rabbits.
Yep. I've been pretty impressed now that we have sheep, which is we're only, I think, 2 months in on sheep now. So it hasn't been for very long. We're going to do a show on just what we've learned so far, but we're by no means experts on sheep. I've been impressed by what those things eat. I always thought sheep would eat grass. That's why I didn't have them, because I grow the crap out of all these other pioneering species that come in when we disturb the ground, and the sheep eat all that. There are some things they should not eat, that we like milkweed they should not eat. Well, I think that's why we lost that one. I think they got into some milkweed. I'm not 100% sure. She got into something. Or her gut biome was messed up, and we had another one get something that we nursed them through. So there are things here they should not eat.
Yeah, but also when it comes to things like sheep, and we had talked about it a little bit, Nicole. I have access to the number one hair sheep veterinarian on planet Earth. He lives down, strangely enough, by the Georgia Guidestones, and World Shepherd.
Anymore.
You mean what used to be formerly known as the Georgia Guidestones?
Yeah, we're all done now. But this guy is one of the best. Well, we gave you some of that mineral, right, Nicole?
Yeah, we're using it now.
And it's his claim, and it's worked well for us, that they're pretty hard to kill once you get the right formulation of mineral in them. And you're also going to realize, too, that everybody says, well, don't put them in here around this. Don't put them around this. I have yet, in all my years of doing this, I have yet to see an animal kill itself by eating something to the point where it would kill it when they had availability of things they could eat.
Yeah, it's that second part that's important.
Right, but they will snip away the things that everybody tells you is dangerous. You'll find out that these animals will eat it it's like drinking too much booze. You can drink enough to get a buzz, or you can go out there and drink yourself to death. And that's what these animals will do if they don't have anything else to drink. Yep. So if you're moving them often and they have availability of things they can eat, they'll just eat enough of the things that they need medicinally.
John, how do you feed that many rabbits?
So Greg Judy does like the salad bar method of minerals, right? They can get the minerals as they want them and only eat the ones that they want. How do we feed rabbits? So Jake Robinson also, Nick Ferguson came here. That's the swales we put in. That's the fodder trees that the new system's going to run and overflow into. What we planted was white mulberries, Russian white mulberry, hybrid poplar, hybrid willow. And those trees are growing. We planted them 9 feet apart. I have a bush hog for the back of my little tractor. I have a bush hog for the front of my skid steer. We made them 9 feet so I can drive right through there, compost them off 4-6 inches above the ground. We're never going to let those turn into trees. We planted them 6 inches apart. There are hundreds of them up there. We're going to cut them super short so they put out branches kind of like blueberry trees, blueberry bushes do. We can go through there and strip leaves. We can go through there and cut and run it through a chipper. But you can also take that stuff, run it through a chipper or process it and put it into 55-gallon drums, add some sugar, airtight the top, ferment it, and now you've made silage, which you can store for up to 24 months. Man. You don't hear the word, and that's tree hay. It's called fodder. You don't ever hear that. If you look at books that were published over 100 years ago about gardening and animals and stuff, you see those words in there. It's just been lost because of pellet. It's just like we've convinced everybody, diamonds are the girl's best friend, right? Diamonds are forever. Yeah, sure. So is nuclear waste. It's the customer's always right. Woolworths came up with that. It's just marketing. It was ways to put you onto their easiness and make money, and the old technology's been lost.
Yep.
Okay, so Tag, do you want to give a comment on the other question, because we're kind of skipping around, about somebody who just bought land? What's the first thing they should do to their raw land?
Yeah, I kind of come from a business background, so I kind of look at things that way. I'm trying to learn a lot about permaculture, the way things go, and all of this stuff. So for me, I would look at it as a time issue. So trees take a long time to grow. I would get right on fruit trees, right? Well, whatever's going to take the most amount of time, because I can't buy my way out of growing an apple tree, right? You got to plant it. It's going to take time. So I think I would lean towards, installing fruit, installing those things. And then I also agree with the water thing. We just built a pond, and it's a big pond, but it took 8 months to build, a long time. So I think that would also be good. But I guess to everybody else's point, if you can't get to it, what does it matter, right?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the permaculture consult, even if you are a permaculturist. And especially if you're not, having somebody come to the land and look at how it's laid out, talk to you about your goals, and you don't need like a detailed plan of everything, because if you do that, you're not going to do that anyway. But having the big picture of what's going to go where helps you prioritize what's most important, whether it's, putting your fruit trees in, whether it's getting sheep or goats to clear all the stuff and get the pastures going, and clearing areas for you to plant trees if you're going to plant trees, whether it's putting in infrastructure and access. Having that view made a huge difference here. And I had spent, 8 or 10 years, I don't even know how long, probably 8 or 9 years running this homestead with no idea what permaculture was, and putting things in stupid, hard to get to places. And then I had a permaculturist out after I learned what permaculture was, realized I had some big changes to make, and have spent the last number of years doing that one thing at a time. And it's starting to come together now. And
shade also with your fruit, like you said, fruit trees, but shade also, man. Like we've
Right.
got a ton of property here. Animals cook. There's just shade.
Yeah.
Somebody had asked about, said something was eating our chickens. We use fences to keep dogs in, and we use dogs to keep predators out. I have 0 predator load since we've had the dogs here on the property. Nothing. My dogs get hold of hawks. My dogs get hold of eagles. Like we have guineas, and the guineas alert anytime they see aerial predators, and the dogs run to that. Like we don't have coyotes. They're all on the game camera, literally on the outside of the fence line. People are always like, deer eat my garden. We don't, nothing comes in those fences with the dogs.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah, there was a question there about compost too. I wanted to bring it up. I just didn't get it in, but just so that I say it, we have a pretty nice size of land, and we just natural prairie grass. So we don't plant anything. We don't fertilize. We don't anything, but we hay that into big round bales of hay, and then we use that for the compost in our garden. So we're just putting it right back in. We're unrolling it. That's what we walk on. That's how we keep it weed free, and that's a pretty inexpensive way to, put it back into your garden.
Do you tarp after that? How do you keep the seed heads from growing out of that?
Yeah, we just try to get it harvested before they get that far.
Okay.
Yep, but we have no weeds. If you went to my garden right now, you'd see maybe 5 randoms, but it's pretty much weed free, and it's that's how we do it. I like it that way.
We bought these bales of real pretty, bright white straw that had been baked, and it can't grow seeds. Boy, it grows great wheatgrass.
Yeah.
We made that mistake the season before last, and bought the same thing. And boy, I tell you what, we had the most beautiful, luxurious golf course between each garden row.
Yes, it never grows where I plant it, only in the gravel. If you want to grow something that, if you can't grow it, man, put it out in my gravel here. It'll grow.
Well, think about that. Every little teeny piece of gravel is edge.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's aquaponics. It literally is. It's aqua system, because it holds moisture.
Yeah. I never realized that. I always thought gravel was a great way to keep weeds down. Nope.
If you're going to buy store-bought hay or straw or anything like that, if you got chickens, let them work it over for a few days, and believe me, they'll get all those weed seeds out of there.
Yeah. Actually, that's a really good idea. You know, we Grumpy Acres, which is a farm not far from us, we kind of do that with the hay. But when you start the year out, you know, roll them all out before everything's growing and let them chickens run in there, Billy. That's some smarts right there.
That's why your chop and drop is working.
Yes.
Because you don't get rain like we do.
Jake Robinson asked if I minded sharing the cost of those. So here's the deal with buying trees. There's a lot of places you can buy trees. It was cheaper for me to buy 1,000 trees than to buy 200 trees. Mm-hmm. It's that you're looking for that price break on those things. Now, the first ones I bought were 24-inch trees, and there's a ton of them growing up there. Now, I abused the hell out of these things. Those trees were in the building, in the boxes, unopened, unwatered for 4 months at least before I opened the box. Some of them had like little white whips coming out the top, some growth, trying to chase some sunlight or warmth. We planted those. The willows all took, every one of them. Mm-hmm. The poplar grew. The mulberries did not. I just brought in a bunch more of those trees, and they're 5 feet tall. They're huge. They're little, just the main stem, 5 feet tall. They all have buds on them. They look great. But what I'm finding with those is their root systems. The root system on the little tree is this big. The root systems on the other tree are this big. And I'm using an auger on a drill to put these things in. My swales are not deep enough, so I'm having to go beyond the swale, and I'm not able to dig far enough. So I'm having to literally trench out horizontal with a big old screwdriver, and it's literally 100 times more labor to put the tall trees in.
Wow.
Yeah, another pointer on that from a cost perspective. So a willow, a cottonwood, and there's some other trees that will do it. You can just clip a branch off, stick it in a bucket of water, and in a week you'll have a ball of roots on the bottom and go plant it out and cost you nothing. Just a little bit of your time.
Yeah, mulberry does the same thing.
We put willow trees in where the dam, on the backside where the dam is leaking, hoping to suck the moisture up so it doesn't kill the pine trees. And I dug a hole, stuck the root balls in there, and I didn't even put dirt back on top of them, and those suckers all came back to life.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Now for something completely different. Any idea how we can, in the chat, connect online besides here? Ideas for people connecting online. Who wants to go?
And there's a project that's going on right now, a freesteading project. It's kind of like a prepper commodity resource collection point that's being put together right now. Maybe that's something that could be looked at. Is that what he's talking about?
Sure. Tell us about it.
Yeah. Tag, you want to talk a little bit about the project?
Yeah. So the idea came up. It's actually called freesteading.
Yep.
And the idea came up is to create a forum or basically a platform that would allow the creators and the subscribers and those people to just openly communicate inside. And it's under development. It's been under development for some time. I worked on it just a little bit yesterday. Some of the circles we run in, we have a gentleman in that circle who, and he might be the best internet marketer in the world. Now, I know, Nicole, you have met him. John, I know you have met him. And I'm not sure if you have or not, Billy.
Billy met him. Yeah, Billy
met him. Yep, because you'd have met him at that other thing. So anyway, we've got some incredible resources. We're working on putting that together. Besides that, I get a lot of requests. I'm sure you guys do too, that, hey, can I visit with you? I do a lot of Zooms and go to meetings and, all kinds of stuff with people trying to live a little bit freer. And if I can help them be free, I'm all interested in that. So I don't really know a place beyond that unless you guys do.
In person, that's the only other. And, I think it's hard with everything we just went through with the sweet and sour sniffles and all. I think we've kind of lost a little bit of humanity along the way here. I really do. Because honestly, it's one thing to meet with everybody in this virtual world, and it's the best we can do right now. It's better than a typical phone call, which is great. And these forums, these private forums are also great. But you know what else isn't great? And I don't know how you get around this, is so many times when you meet, it's one thing for a person to write something here, but until I can look them in the eye, I can't make a true assessment of that person until I'm in the same space. That's the beauty of going to a festival, like what happens out at SOE. That's the beauty about going to the campouts that you have at the Midwest Preparedness thing. That's the beauty of doing a chicken processing or a swale class, is that there's always invariably somebody in a lot of these things that may be a little bit troubled. And you can't necessarily detect that within these forums. But that's something that has kind of been lost along the way, is that I think too many of us have gotten too comfortable in living in this virtual space. And honestly, I'm as guilty as anybody. So, because I'm busy, and I'm very, very busy, and I work 16-hour days every day. In fact, just doing this, I'm not totally disappointed. That means William and Michelle are out doing all the work right now. Because I'm working technically, you dig? But I'm getting to hang out here. But honestly, I think what's been missing in all of this, and I hope, and it seems like Nicole is really, and John as well, have been going out of their way to make these things possible, is that you cannot dismiss the gathering together of the brother and sister.
Amen.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, something I love about your homestead, Billy, having been there now, is it's not just your immediate family. Like, I guess it is your immediate family. Like, it's a family approach with you and Michelle and William. And it goes like all of you are working on that same homestead, and you're all working hard at it. And I think about, when people ask me what's the most challenging thing about homesteading, I don't know that there's a most challenging, but if only one person in the entire family is doing the homestead, and somebody else is working to make money, which often happens because it helps to have money, or if only one person's on board and they're doing everything, that's really hard. And I think, when I look at your homestead, it's clear that the whole family's involved and they're all working hard on it. And that's pretty awesome.
It wasn't always the case, though. And I've talked a little bit about and folks, this is a cautionary tale that I can speak to. Just because you share DNA with somebody doesn't necessarily make them a good fit on the homestead. I've worked in a number of homesteads and collaborations with people. The only ones that have been colossal, dreadful failures were the ones I did with my family, because I thought they would be as invested as me, Michelle, and William were. So now we have, just like when you were here, Nicole, I got my niece who works with me. Got my daughter-in-law that works here also as well. And we all are on this unified goal for certain things. And none of it really involves going to Walmart. So at the end of the day, folks, be real cautious about the people you team up with, because Darren and Patty, they're in the chat right now. We have great relationships with them when we were there and even now. But I don't necessarily have that with my biological family. Just because, there's such a thing as a permaculture divorce, y'all. It happens.
Yep.
Yeah.
Everything.
Family doesn't always mean blood.
It's all doable. Like, somebody asked me when I was drilling the holes, if I had somebody come behind me. No, I can do them faster myself. If I just put on a podcast or music, if I have a person there, I have to stop and talk. When I talk with my hands, and I can't focus on what I'm doing. Everything, like, I have employees that work here specifically for outside. I don't currently. I had a couple guys work here for about 6 months that would do projects, built the rabbit house, built the hay barn, built the things here. But everything that's happened here in literally the last year on the property, homestead-wise, me, all of it. Nobody else helped me. Zero. Like, people come in here all the time and they beeline for Amanda and garden this and homestead that. And Amanda's like, I don't do anything outside. It's literally me by myself, and I run a business, and I sleep 4.5 hours a night. So just make sure you do something every single day, and you'll have accomplishment. Like, you'll see it. Everything's doable. Like, Nicole had said something about, time, and I'm like, I take care of every animal on the property, food, water, anything that needs to be done on a daily basis in 17 minutes. That's what it takes, 17 minutes. And I heard Nicole say something the other day. She's like, I spend the first half of my day working on financing and income and money, and I spend the second half doing, homestead stuff. But it's content too. Like, you can build, if you have eyeballs and you have audience, you can monetize in some manner. You just have to look at it as that. Like, a lot of the things that I do homesteading wise takes 3 times longer, because I do it 2-3 times to get the camera angles in the shot. Like I could literally, like, if you've ever been here, anything you've seen accomplished here, if I didn't video it or YouTube it, man, we'd have 10 times more things done.
Yeah, it's funny. That's why my Garden 30 live streams are like the phones being thrown around and I'm picking beans, and all you see are my hands picking beans while I randomly talk. And half the time I don't see the questions because I'm not looking at my phone. I'm trying to work in the garden. I'd love to get somebody to help me with that, but yeah.
Nicole,
Nicole needs a guy in the chair.
Hey, can I ask something to our special guests real quick about community? So, hey, Tag, over there in where you guys are located in Kansas, how do you guys, and also you too, Data, how do you guys work this out in terms of community and mutual assistance? Because I know that both of you in this area have done astonishing things when it comes to getting grouped together. What can you do? What can you say to all the people out there that are wondering how do they put these things together?
Oh man, that is a complicated question, Billy. That's a question we've been working on a long time, and thank you for the hat tip. So that the thing that you're talking about, we've probably been working on is something a part of the Midwest Preparedness Project, Midwest Preparedness Festival, some of the community series stuff that Tag's been putting on through his Life Done Free channel. If you guys have not checked that out, you should go check out those community series videos. They're pretty good. It's just a bunch of guys talking about the trials and errors of what it takes, and the pains and pleasures of ebbs and flows of putting a group together and watching it fail and then rebuilding it from the ashes and then trying again.
Yeah, I think for me, it's about just getting out there. You got to be willing to take a little bit of risk. If you don't take a bit of risk, you're never going to get anywhere. You're just not. And, you got to try to make good decisions and try to vet right and all of those kind of things. But at the end of the day, you can't do it alone. John, you alluded to this earlier. If you want my property, you'll own it. At the end of the day, that's a factual statement. So you've got to get out there and build trust. And here's the other thing, I would much rather make that decision today on whether or not I can be with somebody than after an event.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to have all this time to date and all of these things, Data. I have hung out with Data now for 12 years. I mean, a long time.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, so I've had a long time to get to know him. And I think you just got to get out there. You got to be willing to take a little risk. And here's the other thing too, learn to be tolerant. Everybody's screwed up. I'm flawed. I promise you, Data's flawed. He might be more flawed than the rest of us, but it's those cheap cigarettes. That's what did it. But that's what happened. Anyway, I think all of those things together do it. And you just got to stay on it, and just keep on it. Go to events, get involved, go to the farmers markets, go to the camp outs and the events that go on, and just put yourself out.
The SOE festival. That's right.
Failing is practice. And a lot of times when you start homesteading, you almost have to do things, especially if you don't have funds available. You have to do things to get to the next point. And once you're to step 3 or 5, you don't even utilize the first thing. You go back over it, but you have to do it in order to get to the other levels.
Right.
Yeah. So John mentioned it takes 17 minutes to take care of his animals in the morning. It takes 15 for me before the sheep. I don't know how long it takes with the sheep. And the reason is that the food is all staged by each animal and everything is set up to be efficient. So usually I don't do the morning animals. Usually I don't do the animal care at all unless there is a medical problem or it's helping with a project. Tactical does most of the animals or the livestock at this point, but he has it set up efficiently so that when I do it, I get it done really quickly. And I think that's something people don't think about when they're first designing their homestead, which is be frugal with your time. And that means setting things up in advance.
What also helps you guys also is, I haven't been to your place yet, Nicole, but I've been to John's. And I thought John might have thought me and William were blowing smoke when we said it, but his within permaculture and within every homestead, you need to be considering your zones.
Yes.
The reason you two are able to get done with what you do is because things are where they're supposed to be. The number one reason why I no longer personally do consultations anymore is because I'm tired of telling people, hey, your chickens should be within zone 2. We met a doctor, one of the most prominent doctors on this planet, that insisted on putting chickens in zone 5, which is basically the wilderness. Okay.
You don't know when they got ate.
Yeah. So they all become coyote bait and they all die. But the reason why, folks, this is a very important thing to take away, is the reason why they are efficient is because things are where they should be. I had another lady, her kitchen garden, the thing that should be in zone 1, she wanted in zone 3 because she's afraid of snakes. Okay, as if the snakes they're not gonna get the memo if the thing is closer. So people are making foolish decisions, and this is why you really ought to have somebody else look over your plan. You really should, because you're too close to it, and because if you're not able to do this dispassionately, you are going to make colossal mistakes. Unless you are a very cerebral person that judges everything in a pragmatic way, if it's your own property, you're probably going to look at it in maybe not the best way. That's why when John brought William out recently to look at the best place to put swales, that was the best thing he could have done, because William can look at this land dispassionately and look at it in the most functional way, which is why, whether it's your bug out location, whether it's your home, whether it's your commercial property, whatever the case may be, always bring in an outside source to get that extra set of eyes, because if your zoning's off, you just made your life very, very unnecessarily complicated.
And I think you can apply the zones to community. So circling back to the community topic is, if you look at like having the people closest to you that you interact the most with, both digitally and physically, what's your zone 0, what's your zone 1, what's your zone 2, where spend more time on 0 and 1 and 2 than you're going to spend on 6 or 7, but realize that you have layers of community. And if you prioritize that right, you can set a foundation of a thriving, growing community that interacts, and each person is at the hub of their own zone map for that.
Yes.
We've often considered it the crew, the mag, and the mind. The mind's like-minded, the mag is what's kind of in the middle, and then the crew's that inner group. Yep. And you kind of got to nurture all three to end up where you want to be. But we refer to it as the crew, the mag, and the mind.
I love that. That's awesome.
So they don't
you put some smart thought into this.
Yes, a lot.
So basically, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, Billy.
No, I was wondering. So you're saying basically everybody starts in the outer ring, and then over time they have the access to get in closer. Yep,
and they don't even know what's going on most of the time
because they have to believe it.
Just community. We're hanging out, we're camping, and the relationship builds and builds and builds, and then just really slowly it begins to contract until you get to the the crew, that inner side where you're working together and logistics and all of the things that go on. So yeah, the crew, the mag, and the mind.
That's because they have the most organic circle.
They have to prove themselves. You don't want to bring, strangers out here are safe. They light something on fire, it's not your house. You don't want to bring them next to your children because you don't know. Everybody's contagious, number one. You're going to catch something.
Love that.
But don't bring them where they can damage your inner family, right? They have to prove themselves first.
Yep.
And likewise, when you are new to a community, realize where you are in that scale, because what works best when you're new to a community is to not be overly pushy, be helpful to the community, establish your trustworthiness.
Yeah.
And all of those things. And if you don't take the time to do that, and then you're mad because you don't understand why you're not in the inner circle yet. Yeah. Well, it's because it takes time for it's like getting to know somebody. You're kind of like, we're dating here. We're not really dating, but we're dating here. I got to get to know you and know if you're really who you say you are, because a lot of people are not.
How do you handle that?
Right there.
I call that getting to the golf club.
How do you deal with that, Tag, when you have, let's say, and I've seen it before, where let's say you have one spouse that everybody likes, and then the other one is something of an albatross. How do you govern those relationships?
Yeah, so I kind of view it like it's a package deal, and you either like it or you don't. At the end of the day, we're all going to come down to a clan anyway. At the end of the day, my responsibility is my wife, my kids, first and foremost, above everything else. And so I think you got to either just decide that it's worth the hassle or it's not worth the hassle. I don't think you can separate it.
Yeah, you can't tell somebody, well, divorce your wife to be with our group, right?
Right.
That's not a thing. It's a friend of mine is married to a police officer, actually, and She's a YouTube personality too. And somebody realized she was married to a cop and got really mad. And I can't believe you're married to a cop. I'm going to unfollow now. And she's like, well, thank you very much. Now that you've mentioned that my 15-year marriage to a cop offends you, I think I'll divorce him just to keep you as my YouTube listener.
What he really meant is, I can't believe you're married. I thought you were.
She's a beautiful woman too. It's possible.
John, why did you leave that comment? I'm kidding.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I got you. I've seen the question a few times about NRCS grants. I don't have one. I can repeat a few things that I know, and a lot of people, when they have that conversation, I think the important first thing to tell you is they don't buy your row house. You buy your row house. They compensate you for your row house. Your row house cannot be double wall, I believe. It cannot be heated, and you have to grow only in the ground in that row house.
John Moody did a really good podcast episode on the Survival Podcast with Jack Spirko that if you search out John Moody on the survivalpodcast.com, it'll bring up the 3 or 4 episodes he's done with Jack. One of them was on those grants, and it's totally worth a listen to before you decide if you want to do that.
Also, keep in mind that there's some of these things. It's not just NRCS. When I was living in Oklahoma for a time, they would come out and build you a pond. There was one old boy, he was a pipe fitter I worked around. They built him a pond, and he's like, oh, man, this is great. Well, what he didn't realize is that now he signed a Faustian bargain, and now anybody can come out there on your land and fish that ground for, I forget what the period of time was. Same thing out here where I live in North Carolina. You sign that Faustian bargain, you may be giving up something. So it may be like the Merchant of Venice, Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice, where you sign that contract, and if you don't come through on your end, you're going to extract that proverbial pound of flesh, so to speak. So but I'm always cautious. Now, I would, like John has suggested, basically look at both sides of that thing. There may be I've heard some people that have had wonderful experiences with that. And any means you can get tax money, or rather theft, back from Uncle Sam, I'm all for that, but just make sure you're not signing a Faustian bargain.
A lot of times too, guys are like, hey, you can put all these acres in a green belt and not have to pay, the same property tax or pay no profit. What happens when you want to sell that property, or you need to cut those trees? I mean,
yeah, if you put your property in green belt with a forestry plan, and then you do not stick to your forestry plan, you build a house there that you're not supposed to, I believe you have to retroactively pay those property taxes back. There is a penalty that's financial and real. And it is important to know that before you go in. Not that you shouldn't do Greenbelt, but just know what you're agreeing to.
I think that everybody should run, no matter what you're doing, you should run your life, your homestead as a business. If you have some sort of income, you can have some sort of loss, and you can have some tax diversion to that. And if you just run, if you look at your life as, when I'm going to do this task, what does it cost me to do it? And I break it down by the day, the hour, and the minute, right? What is my time? What am I capable of making per minute? And what am I capable of doing these tasks versus paying some guys to come in and do these tasks? Mm-hmm. And most people don't look at that. If you look at the meth head stealing copper out of the walls, if he paid himself minimum wage versus scrapping, he's probably not making minimum wage when you really get to the bottom of it. And people don't take that into consideration because they don't look beyond, like, if you want to 10x your income through your own stuff, not some multi-level marketing bullshit, I can tell you how to do that, right? We can have that conversation. You want to come and see how we do things, we can do that. But the common thing with all of that is that you guys actually have to do something. And most people that are having those conversations, they just don't.
Yeah.
When it comes to those grants, can I hit on that one real quick thing? There's a farming community. They reached out to me here near Asheville, and they asked me to be a part of it. I don't know how they got a hold of me, but they did. I go there, and I go to their meeting, and all I hear there must have been 15 different local farmers in there that were all complaining that they didn't get enough grant money, and they're having a hard time making it. In fact, one of the ladies lived in the town near to me, and she's talking. Of course, these are very, very leftist tradition type people. And she's going on about food inequity in the Black community, I think, sort of ingratiating herself into me. And then in the very next sentence talks about how she's barely putting food on the table. And I'm like, why are you worried about black folks, woman? You ain't even putting bread on your own table. So here it is. These people this is very important, y'all. They cannot make it as a homestead or a farm without grants. So they got on there. It's like starting using ether to start an old truck. After a while, it ain't going to start without the ether. And that's where these people are. So be very, very, it's one thing to go out there and get these grants. Private grants are absolutely the best. Look, like Snoop Dogg said, you want to break bread, I won't fake dead. So if you're giving away free money, go in there and get it, especially if it's a private thing. And like Dave Ramsey teaches, if there's an opportunity to get some of your money back that they stole, take it. Remember, there's going to be a Faustian deal for some of these things, but also don't be like these other folks. Then when they're telling me they can't afford to feed their pigs, I'm saying, well, look, I got methods where I feed my pigs for free. Do you want to hear about it? And they don't want to hear about it. Oh, chicken feed is getting out of control. I can't afford that. Well, check it out, y'all. I do a chicken tractor on steroids. It got to the point where every problem they were throwing out there, I was throwing viable solutions. And just like Plato's allegory of the cave, where that person escapes the depth of Plato's cave, gets out, sees the blue sunlight, the green grass, and realizes, whoa, there's a real reality out here that's not just black and white on those cave walls. So they go back down into the cave, tell everybody that's chained to that cave, looking up at these figures that don't exist, and he tells them, hey, this is not real. Well, in Plato's allegory of the cave, what do they do to that person? They kill him. Well, that's exactly what these people were trying to do to me. Of course, they were all a bunch of soy boys, and I'd have mopped the floor with them. But the point being is that the notion of looking after yourself, like John said a moment ago, putting foot to butt and doing it without grants was just unthinkable to them. So don't be that person. Sorry to give you this,
No, that was a great story.
But
it's people constantly ask, how do I do this? And every one of us has seen it. And you start telling them how to do it or demonstrate or, hey, here's how we did it, right? But the first thing that comes out is, well, I can't because, right? Yep. It's constant. It's just action. It literally comes down to action.
Yes.
Somebody had asked, is there a book for this? There's hundreds of thousands of all kinds of great books.
Yeah.
But
let's recommend our favorite book.
Books left to interpretation in your head, whereas on YouTube videos now or internet videos, you can see proof at the end. Is the garden there, right? Did this work? This is the fertilizer. Whereas in a book, it's imagination. You have to paint your own picture.
Just remember in all those things that books and videos are less important for what they say than for what they make you think.
Mm-hmm.
That's the real thing. You watch a video on something, you shouldn't be saying, how do I make it just like that person a lot of times, although that may be a solution. But you also need to say, how does that work for my situation? Instead of looking for a cut and paste thing. And just let's not forget also, in addition to those modalities of education, I can't even begin to quantify, and it might embarrass the both of them, but honestly, I have learned, and William has learned tons from John and Nicole, and so have I. Little things that you might think are insignificant have been extraordinarily powerful in my life. So that's where this exchange of ideas within these modalities, whether it's in this form now or and it's always best in person. It really is. Don't, like I said, at the end of the day, they're less important for what they say than for what they make you think.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that if I can. I think that there's a book out there that's just amazing. It's called Build My Community by You. You're the author. Go build a community and you'll fix a lot of this. You'll figure out a lot of stuff. So got Amazon that, right?
That's a true story.
I love that title.
Yeah.
Is that a real book or are you being sarcastic?
That's the number
I'm being sarcastic.
Oh, shit. Okay.
I'm being sarcastic.
Yeah.
That's the number one.
You need to write that book. I will help you lay it out.
Yeah, deal.
We could totally get that on Amazon. It could just
There's
be
a
blank pages with
blank pages,
shapes to fill in.
City ordinance against chickens. That's one I hear all the time, right?
Yeah.
I was in San Diego, right, with chickens and rabbits and ducks. It's allowed versus able. It literally is allowed versus able. Kearney Mesa, My grandmother's next door neighbor were Vietnamese. They had a whole farm in the backyard. You could hear it. You could smell it. Things might have changed a little bit now. I mean, but you can still do quail. You can do rabbits. Those are my kids. There's always something you can do.
What animal do they allow there? Because at this day and age, turn everything upside down. I even did a video about it once. Tell them your chicken and say it straight face. Your chickens identify as dogs.
Yeah, a winged dogs. That's what Sandy said. She went on to say you helped her with that.
Yeah.
And I wasn't addressing her, but so often you hear that.
Yeah.
Everybody doing these quail because you can't have chickens. And I'm like, my kid even has, we've got 40 quail right over here. And I'm like, they got this other thing maybe you've heard of. It's called a chicken. And it lays a real egg. And I like to just mess with those guys, but there's always a way.
Your son makes a heck of a batch of pickled quail eggs.
Yes. Guys, I was in federal prison for 22 months in Lompoc, the one that you always hear about in every movie, right? Guys were stealing produce from the commissary in the kitchen. They were taking seeds out from the kitchen, and they had a huge garden. And then guys would harvest that, and they would trade. And the revenue, the cash in prison is stamps. That's what you buy everything with, is stamps. There were guys running full-on stores in federal prison off gardening that they did, which was not allowed. But people are worried about city ordinances.
Yeah. It's more like know what it is and think of a way that you can get around that if you need to. I have a friend who was listening to this live feed earlier who has a limited amount of space in his city lot. And he did a presentation on gorilla planting in the parks nearby. Yep. Edible things. He would just start planting things and kind of make it look pretty. And then the landscape guy, the person maintaining it, wouldn't really realize it wasn't part of the landscape. And then that guy starts maintaining it for him and ended up with, fruit producing things.
Billy talks about that all the time.
Yeah.
What about, I'm driving by, I had to make a trip into Asheville today. And as I'm talking to, I got something here. As I'm talking to Patrick on the way back, what I passed by on the road, there's probably 2-acre plot right there on the side of the interstate of wildflower. Then there's another 2-acre plot. They have sunflowers. Then there's another 2-acre plot of zinnias. Then it goes right back. The process repeats over and over again. Okay, let's think about this. Okay, so you got your federal or state or whatever the government municipality might be. They're out there spending, and just what I cited there's 8 acres of things you can't eat except for the sunflowers. Okay. So if they can requisition that land, I'm a taxpayer, unfortunately. If they can requisition that land, why can't you? And if you do it right, like what we're doing at John's place, whether he decides on an orchard or a food forest, you can hide things in plain sight in a food forest where you have a bank of, let's say, fodder trees, or they could be nitrogen fixers. And then intermingled in there might be an apple, a pear, things that you can grow in plain sight, like sweet potatoes. They're going to think that's ivy, and they'll walk right past it. You can grow food right there, unless it's a tomato. You can grow food in plain sight. And look, there are things in this world called unjust laws. I ain't asking permission no more. And I don't think any of you should either. I'm not asking permission to be what Tag is, a free man.
Bam. Mic drop.
Most people that ask permission is because they know the answer is no, and it gives them an excuse to not perform.
Or do the George Costanza defense, where that thing in Seinfeld years ago, back when I used to watch TV, George basically gave around this cashmere sweater, and it wound up, I don't know if you guys know the story, but anyway, he gets called into his boss's office, and he was basically having a sexual relationship with a maid. Well, she ratted him out once he gave her a cashmere sweater that had a hole or a stain on it, okay, thinking he was going to shut the whole thing up. He gets called into his boss's office, and he's like, George, we're going to have to let you go. You were having sex with one of the workers in the office. And then straight face, he looks at that worker and says, was that wrong? Should I not have done that? Had I known having sex on the job was frowned upon in this place, I wouldn't have engaged in such activity. Well, why can't you say the same when it comes to these open areas? You know, oh, you mean I couldn't grow fruit trees here? Or, oh, this wasn't cool? Look, man, like Joe Salatin said, they're growing weed in national forests. Nobody ever thought about growing tomatoes?
Yep. That's right. A fine just means it's permittable with a price.
Yep.
Legal for a fee. If they're letting a lady get on an airplane with a turkey, then I'm sure you can have some chickens in your neighborhood.
I just hope that turkey has a diaper on.
That's a picture you can't get out of your mind.
No. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Okay, guys, I'm going to do a check-in because we've been on for a little over 2 hours. How's everybody doing for time? Because I don't know, Patrick and Tag, what are you guys still cool?
But I'm sitting up at the third story in what we call the crow's nest, overlooking my entire farm, and my beautiful bride is down there making sauerkraut. She's gorgeous as she was the day that I met her. I am good to go.
Okay.
I'm good.
This live stream. What did you do wrong, Tag, that you're trying to make up for right now?
Well, she hasn't heard this, so she don't know, right?
When he's telling you, he's really fibbing. She's out there lollygagging is what she's really doing.
I bought the cheap cigarettes.
Data,
you're never going to live that one down, bro.
Oh, no. You know what? I'm proud of that. But that was a defining moment in my life. That really was the kind of the light bulb moment for us. And, man, after that, I bought a Hummer. I put some big meaty tires on it, put a big brush guard on it. I was not getting stuck again. I spun that Trans Am like 4 times in a row in Aurora in an intersection and thought, man, I'm an idiot. What am I doing here? And I have been self-reliant ever since.
Okay, here's a question from the Peanut Gallery. You said American guinea hogs are good for fat. What's a good smaller-sized meat pig?
Same pig. You can do it. Here's the beauty about an American guinea hog. For me, it's the best pork you will ever taste in your life. Downside is it's going to take anywhere between a year to 18 months to get that thing up to the weight. But here's the beauty. When you use the systems that we provided through YouTube, it's not behind a paywall or anything. You use those systems, you can feed these guys indefinitely. Now, there is a danger with a guinea hog of getting them too fat because there is nothing more efficient when it comes to pigs of taking that energy you see outside in the form of whatever you want to call it and turning it into something that is worthwhile. So from a survival standpoint, you only get 4 calories per gram from protein and carbs. From fat, you get 9 calories per gram. So you're taking this pig, and remember, the hardest thing to find in nature is fat. So you're taking this pig, they're converting whatever it is out there into fat that you can store and put in the jar. Now, I would not go out of my way. Now, I raise guinea hogs for fat specifically, but also for the best pork in the world to me. I also raise Yorkshires right now specifically as meat pigs. I'm not going to get a whole lot of fat off of them. But if you want an all-around pig that you can maintain with very little, guinea hogs, my vote, any day of the week, because at the end of the day, you're getting a pig that is very docile, very easygoing, very laid back, high production, but it takes longer to get up to weight. And another thing about a guinea hog, it's just a downside by some, is that you're not going to see a standard in that breed. They're not always going to be the same size. It's a mixed bag, but the benefits in my world far outweigh the liabilities. So if you want to do it like me, where I raise guinea hogs for very little meat and a whole lot of fat, and I raise Yorkshires for a whole lot of meat and very little fat, you can combine those two. As far as one pig to do it all, I'm going with a guinea hog.
Yeah, I raised guinea hog potbelly mixes.
Ooh,
they produced some fat. No, they were great, but yeah, it was by accident. They were not as advertised. It was one of those, but they were free and underfed and half starved when I got them, but they did not leave this place starved. I had large for years. Let's see. I had a question here about what are good things to plant in open areas? And I'm assuming this was in relationship to when we were talking about planting food. So I'm assuming that's food related things.
That's
Okay.
a good question.
It
Tree.
depends on the area, and that's the answer nobody ever wants to hear. It depends. You can see John smiling because the number one answer in permaculture is it depends. Ask yourself where you live. Okay, this time of year, what could you put in an open area? I would think sweet potatoes would do pretty well in there, and most people wouldn't even know that they were sweet potatoes. I'm doing it right now in some pretty open areas, and I'll maybe record a video on that. Just think of whatever can be, is it a shady area? What could you put in there? Or is it a high acidic area? Do you see a lot of pines around? Could be like John's place where he's got blueberry heaven out there. Any number of places. It all depends on your location.
Do you know what's a beautiful plant, puts a beautiful flower out? Okra. Like the leaves are attractive, the flowers, that big flower. And yes, you also get a vegetable harvest off it. Most people don't know what okra looks like.
Exactly. And it looks like ironweed from a distance. So they're never going to raise. You could sit there and plant okra as long as it's not in rows. You can sit there and plant it. And most people are going to think it's either ironweed or they're going to think it's some other invasive weed that I can't think of right now.
Will it reseed itself and come up second, third, fourth generation?
Once the pods fall off, they will.
Yeah. Depends on the location too. If you're in a hot area, well, if you're not in a hot area, okra ain't going to do it well anyway. But yeah, theoretically, Ken, I've seen that sort of thing a lot in Texas.
Yep.
We've left cabbages in. We've left cabbages. I don't know, man. I don't know.
Swiss chard or kale?
Yeah, Swiss chard. We did cabbages, Swiss chard, kale, beets, and carrots. And we left them in the very beginning of the CUFUS, let them grow up huge, go to seed, and they just kept going. And we have some of those still in those exact same beds right now, 3 years later.
That's awesome.
Turnips are another good one.
It doesn't taste awesome, but we also didn't add any fertilizer. We did nothing but water it.
Wow.
Yeah, turnips are delicious.
Yeah, it's another good one. Grows great, prolific, grows in about any dirt.
Yeah, super duper.
Animals like it.
Deer love them if you need to attract some meat to your property.
Hogs, deer, cattle, they all love it.
Reduce compaction at the same time. So think about, just like Tag was saying, okay, so from a turnip, let's say it's a daikon radish or something like that. There's a lot of these things that will bust up the soil and do what, let's say, a dandelion would do. The only reason you have dandelions in your soil is really compaction, or you have too little calcium. Okay. Well, why not replicate that dandelion? Which, first of all, dandelions are demonized for no reason. I know Nicole knows all about that. So maybe look at some of these things as food, or think, well, gee, if a dandelion's growing there, you know what? I could probably grow some radishes there too.
Yeah. Sweet potatoes. Can you propagate from a vine for more tubers? I can answer it, but I'm sure others can answer it.
Go ahead, Nicole.
Here's what I do. I go out to my sweet potato vine and I take scissors and I do this. And I carry it inside and I throw it in a cup with water. That's what I do. You don't have to. You can put it in the dirt and keep the dirt watered. And in 3 days, that thing has roots and can go right back out in the ground and it propagates. Sweet potato is one of the most easy vines to propagate, which is why it's such a powerhouse, because it loves, for us in the South, because it loves heat, easy to propagate. And you can just keep moving them and taking cuttings, and it shades the ground. So you have less of a weed problem, but also you get sweet potatoes at the end of the day, and it will tuber. You don't have to go from tuber to get tuber on that. Not like a potato.
We left sweet potatoes in the ground through all the ice and snow last year, and then pulled them out this year, put them in 20-gallon Rubbermaid containers, and every one of them has huge sprouts on it now. And now we can cut those into individuals and let them scab and plant them, or plant them whole. There's literally, you can do, the sweet potatoes will grow any way you want to grow them. And if you need to overwinter them and you don't want to leave them in the ground, like Nicole said, you can just put them in your kitchen in some water, and come spring or right before, you can pop them in the ground and they'll grow more potatoes. And sweet potatoes are not potatoes either.
That's right.
Right. You can eat the greens. The vines are a bit chewy, so I don't eat the vine part. You can, but it's chewy.
Feed them to animals if you don't want to use it.
You can take a vine inside, put it in a nice houseplant pot, and let it trail over and cut off it from time to time. Keep it watered. You've got your sweet potato slips for the next year and a pretty plant in your house for the winter.
And you can sell them. You can sell starts.
Yep. Sweet potatoes are the easy button. And okra. Okra is another thing in the South. Like that just grows itself.
Yep.
That's a good starvation. So, people always say I'm going to plant a bunch of, squash or zucchini if I actually need to live off my garden. If I do that, I'm going to starve because we have squash vine borers and they kill a lot here. And so unless I'm using pesticide or constantly babysitting, my squash usually have so far, actually this year they've lasted longer than ever before. I may have finally attracted some predatory bugs for that. I don't know, but okra just grows and it's prolific and it goes into November unless it gets wiped out by a frost, and it produces a lot of food.
That's where a lot of people are missing the boat in terms of preparedness and all this. Everybody's looking to bring it, not everybody, but there's a great many people out there looking for some avant-garde thing that's unproven, untested. What works well in your area? Well, when I was living up in Kansas, depending on where that area was in Kansas, apples did pretty darn well. You know what else is really cool? Is that when you have those perennial crops, whether it's a nut tree, there was also my favorite nut up there, which is a black walnut. Now that takes a little bit of work and it's a double-edged sword with that. So instead of thinking about these avant-garde species that you can brag to your friends about, think about what already does well there. Like in my case, we come here and I got a friend of mine down the road, 8 generations of mountain wisdom over here. And he's like, in his own way, like, why are you growing tomatoes out there when we have natural ones called Tommy toes that grow up here like weeds? And I'm like, what? Okay. Ben from Renewed Homestead said the same exact thing to me. And we're like, okay, so there is a tomato that is already indigenous here that grows almost invasively. So why are we going through all this trouble to grow other things? Think about those perennial crops, especially in these times. Passive food production is what so many homesteaders miss. Think about all the fruit trees that could be producing. John is right there on his property, a couple of the best structured figs I've ever seen.
Yep, I took cuttings off those.
Yeah, and look what he did also. That's another permaculture technique. He's dumped piles of wood chips out there, and he's producing things in extraordinary ways in places that they should not exist. So use the right method, take the right dog to the hunt, and also consider the things that are already I'm not going to try to grow cherries by and large where John lives. I'm going to try to grow stone fruits because they do well there. Don't try to pick cultivars that were never meant to be in that place. Yeah. Find what already works there and expand on it.
Yep.
Great advice.
So I need like Tommy toast seeds from you next year. Is that doable?
Yeah, I could probably.
I don't have any of those.
I'll bring them out to you when we do the swale class.
Yeah, I'm doing my tomato seed collection right now. So just because I try to get early fruit.
We do burritos once a week here, and we get these little yellow tubs of cherry tomatoes. Everything gets scraped off the plates into the feed bin and fed to the chickens every day. And we have those cherry tomatoes growing all over in those pumpkins out there.
Yep.
Every year we buy all of the pumpkins at Walmart the day after Halloween. We put them on the fence posts for our fall festival. And in the winter when they're frozen, we just smash them off and throw them out in the grass right along the culvert there. And that's 50% of the pumpkins that are growing this year are those seeds that we threw down there, and they just busted open.
Yeah.
They just continue to grow. We've got zucchini and tomatoes growing up in the upper compost pile because the chickens get in there and have nests and poop in there. And so there's stuff growing all over the place that we didn't plant.
We like to hang pumpkins from chains and outside the chicken runs, and then the chickens go around and play with them, and it keeps them occupied.
Gives them something to snack on, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You need a tomato cage with 4 sides to keep the raccoons out. Since I already know that your sister does not want you taking care of that raccoon the way I would.
You just need a dog.
There you go.
Great gardening dog. There you go.
Yeah. Yep. Or trap it and move it if you can't shoot it.
Yeah.
They're actually pretty easy to catch, oddly enough.
Raccoons?
All right.
Yeah, live catch trap, yeah.
Well, it kind of looks like we're winding up here, guys. Do we want to go around the the horn and just sort of say something closing? That sound good? All right. Who wants to go first?
Your show, Nicole. You tell us.
I
You're the boss.
It's my show now. John, it's my show. Ha!
Here, I'll go. I do a live video every night at 9 o'clock. We can talk about whatever you want on YouTube. Typically 9. If I'm not on at 9, it'll be sometime, generally every day of the week, almost every day of the year. We can have whatever conversation that you want to have. As long as the conversation's good, I'll continue to talk. And when it dwells out, then I have other things to do.
Yep. Well, let's go Patrick next.
Yeah, you guys be active, be prepared, stay prepared, get out in your community. You know, like we talked about earlier, if you want to be a part of a mag, you want to be a part of a crew, you know, then go do it. You want to be a part of whatever, then go do it. You know, if somebody mentioned earlier in the live stream that maybe you should start, that Billy should start a Appalachian preparedness project. Well, maybe they should. You know, why are you waiting on somebody else to do it? Do it yourself. Be the solution. Be your own hero.
Awesome. Tag.
Yeah, man. You know, I've been waiting to say this entire time, you know, when they were talking about the government programs and that, don't get in bed with those people. I don't care what it is. Don't do it. Don't take it. It ain't free. Nothing's free. If it's free to you, it just means that, you know, you're not selling, but just don't do it. Go live free. Do it for yourself. And, you know, somebody made a comment in here about extremists unite. If it's extreme for me to be accountable for my own actions and to do for myself and not be a drain on society and not be a drain that I'm an extremist, sign me up, tag out.
Bam.
Bam. That's what I'm talking about. I'm Billy with Permapastures Farm. We also have a podcast now called the Permaculture Pimpcast. If you're looking for a non-milquetoast version of farm-related topics where we try to keep it light, we try to keep it up, and we're going to change, I think, the podcast space in permaculture. Nicole pretty much owns it all in all things preparedness, and I want to give a shout out to Nicole and John and Patrick and Tag for all the contributions that great and small and that everybody's made in my life. So it's always a joy to be with you. Another thing I want to leave you with, do not attempt to go to sleep at night watching one of John's videos at a mental institution, because you're not going to do it. He messed me up because I'm up until 2 a.m. researching Georgia Tan. Never heard of this woman in my life. And then come to find out we had some serious diabolical creatures way back when. That was one of the most engaging videos that I'd seen in a very long time. And so, yeah, don't do that when you're trying to go to sleep.
We still have those people.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the live stream happens every Wednesday at 12:30. So be sure to tune in wherever you are. We're streaming today on the Permapastures Farm YouTube, John's YouTube at Special Operations Equipment, my YouTube at Living Free Tennessee. Definitely, if you are on one and not the others, go to those other channels. Give us a like and follow. Tag has a YouTube channel. Life Done Free. Check that out. I'll be dropping it into the description after we're done with this. And then Data, what do you got?
Yeah, so Dana's working on a project on the Freesteader project. I'm also working on a Getting Free or Getting Deep with Data podcast interview where we've interviewed some cool people. So go check that out. That's getting built as we speak. So
yeah, so come back to the show notes after this and the description, and I'll drop whatever links I can into that. Also, the Swale Workshop is in a week and a half in Camden, Tennessee. I think it's well worth doing it. It's unlike any other workshop you're going to see on this topic. We've got great teachers. The property that we're doing this at is a great training facility. It has a big parking lot. We're going to be able to escape the heat and get out of it. That's at selfreliancefestival.com/swale. If you go to that link and sign up, then nobody who's in the competition for who sold the most tickets wins, because you gave none of us credit. But if you go to John's emails that he sends out and use his link, he gets credit. If you go to my website, livingfreeintennessee.com, and click on the link, I get credit. And if you go to Billy's, is it on your website or where do you have it?
It should be in everything we put out on the videos.
Yeah. So everything Billy puts out on his YouTube channel that's saying, hey, buy the Swale ticket, he gets credit. And the winner of this particular competition does win some very special Aunt Helen's pickled beets that are delicious. They're delicious, right, John?
Yes. But not only that, you have the opportunity to talk to these guys with maybe 100 people around versus 1,000 people around.
Right.
Yeah. And that's definitely worth it. It's going to be July 30th and 31st in Camden, Tennessee. So just hit us up there. And if you want to learn how to can beef, livingfreeintennessee.com/canning. Definitely, if you want to be on one of these live streams, reach out to me. Use the contact form at livingfreeintennessee.com and say, hey, I'm interested in being on a live stream. This is what I'm interested in talking about. Here are links to me. I will start following up with people who do that. Just because a lot of people have been asking how to get on a live stream, and it's kind of, it's up to John and me a little bit about who we add, but it's really great to have a variety of different inputs on these and different topics, and to just help each other learn. So Patrick and Tag and Billy, thank you for joining us today. It was fun to be the Brady Bunch with all of you. Make it a great week, guys.
Yeah.
See you guys.
Pleasure. Thanks, guys.